Let's do this here on a Friday. It is Happy Hour Friday here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. And don't forget, you can watch the show live at 97.3ESPN.com. I'm your host, Mike Gill. Josh Henning is producing today's show. You out there on a Friday. We are jam-packed today. You know, sometimes you just kind of roll with what comes your way. So we did that today. We got a busy weekend. Sixers, Flyers, Phillies, all involved. NFL draft. Flyers are kind of on the outskirts. But we're going to play a fun game tonight with Pete Thompson during Happy Hour Friday. He doesn't even know it yet. But we'll get into that at 5. John Clayton, the professor, tonight joins us at 5:25 right here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. And, of course, we got plenty of thoughts on the draft. You can keep your draft questions throughout the show. If you're watching the show live and you want to get involved, coming up today at 3 o'clock, ESPN NFL reporter Sal Paolantonio will join us. So we're jam-packed. Dan Schulman, Sunday Night Baseball. The Phillies are on Sunday Night Baseball this week. We have that game for you live on 97.3 ESPN. Bob Wankel is going to talk Phillies. So everything seems to be in play today. So whatever's on your mind, if you're watching the show, if you're listening to the show, text me on the text board, 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. Hit me up on the text board there. If you're watching the live video stream, whatever platform you're on, Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, you can leave a comment, and we'll put it up on the screen. And I'll answer any of your questions. We can converse on everything live on the show. That's the best part about it. So much. I do want to say this. There wasn't a game last night to react to. Phillies were off. Flyers actually did play, but I don't want to react to that game. And the Sixers play tonight. We will get into that game here in just a moment because that game, it is the first game ever between Zion and Joel Embiid. So I want to ask you guys. You can pick one of those two guys. Who you taking? Zion or Embiid? I want you to be non-biased here. It's the first ever meeting between Joel Embiid. I'm actually gonna type this out and tweet it out between Joel Embiid and Zion. I probably should have thought this before the show, but I looked up at the clock and didn't realize it was 2:00, so I'm a little flustered. First ever meeting between Zion and Joel Embiid. Who are you taking to start your franchise? There we go. I have been on record have been on record saying that I think Zion is a tremendous player, but I don't know that he is the type of player that absolutely changes a franchise. I will admit he has exceeded what I thought he would be as a player at this stage of his career. In other words, his points per game, his production he's been a better statistical player than I thought he would be. But I contend I'm not sure that Zion Williamson is the player that changes the franchise as he was billed to be. And that's like, I feel bad for Zion. He's a great kid. This isn't like Mike Gill hates Zion. No, I love Zion. He's a great kid. I think he's great for the sport. I think it's unfortunate that he got stuck in New Orleans for the sport. But I don't think the Pelicans, now he's 20 years old. Keep that in mind. You know, like we like to do with our stars in Philadelphia, if you're not good right off the bat, you stink. That's not the case. Zion is 20 years old. So let's not, rush this kid to anything. He's going to be a tremendous, tremendous, tremendous player. He already is a tremendous, tremendous, tremendous player. The question that I have is he the best player on the team that wins a championship? Can Zion make a team go from having the number one pick in the draft to becoming a championship level team? And I'm not so sure that that's who he is. And that's okay. It doesn't mean that he stinks. I mean, his numbers this year are eye-popping, actually. If you actually, have seen what he did. I think the other night, it was the first game, and he had a record going there. It was Zion Williamson tied Shaquille O'Neal for the most 20-point games on at least 50% from the field in the shot clock era. He did it 25 consecutive games. It's pretty unbelievable. One of the questions I had about Zion coming into the league was at 6'6", he's not a shooter. He still doesn't shoot, by the way. I mean, he's attempted 24 threes, which makes him, I guess half better than what Ben Simmons has attempted. He's 9 of 24, so he's not even a bad three-point. He's like 37%. Not terrible, 9 of 24. He just doesn't shoot them. But one of the questions we had coming in, or one of the questions I had coming into the league for Zion was at 6'6", you've got some bigger guys at the rim. Was he going to be able to have his way in the middle of the paint? You're not facing Virginia. You're not facing Wake Forest on a night-to-night basis. You're facing Rudy Gobert and Joel Embiid and, Anthony Davis. You're facing some bigger guys that can alter your shot. Zion has proved capable of being able to score in the painted area. What he has really not, now he's doing more of. If you've watched him recently, he is starting to add the mid-range game a little bit more. And if he does that, that's really going to add to his. He doesn't shoot the three at all. But the Pelicans have not had a lot of on-court success with the addition of Zion Williamson. They are a non-playoff team currently in the Western Conference, and they're not making the playoffs this year. They would have to go on some sort of run here to get themselves in position to make the playoffs over the last 2.5 months, month and a half of the season here. But is the Zion hype, him entering the league as the clear-cut number one pick, now Ja Morant, who, by the way, was the number 2 pick in that draft, is currently snugly sitting into the 8th spot in the playoffs. Zion, the number 1 pick in the draft, is 7 games under 500. So, and I can make an argument, I'm sure most people would agree with me, the Pelicans have a better roster than the Memphis Grizzlies. Agree or disagree? I don't think it's debatable. The New Orleans Pelicans have the number 1 overall pick in the draft in Zion Williamson. They have a number 2 pick in the draft in Brandon Ingram. They have another number 2 pick in the draft in Lonzo Ball. Not to mention, Steven Adams is a pretty good, well-accomplished player. Eric Bledsoe has been to the playoffs multiple times. Josh Hart's a nice player. So the Pelicans roster is better than the Memphis roster. This isn't to say that Ja Morant should have been the number 1 overall pick, but let's be honest with ourselves. He has done more for that team than has done for his team. True or false? I know we get enamored by the numbers, and Zion's got tremendous numbers. 26 points a game, 7 rebounds, 3.5 assists. Heck, he even throws a steal in there. I'll give him credit for the steal. His numbers are better, quote unquote, than Ja Morant, except for the most important stat of them all. How many games are you winning? And Ja Morant has got his team not only to more wins, but into the playoffs. He averages 18.5 a night. He averages 7.5 assists. He averages 3.5 rebounds. And Ja Morant's not a guy who shoots the three all that well either. He's only 25%. In fact, he's rotten from three-point range. But he's a leader, and he cares about his team winning the games. And I'm not saying Zion doesn't, but Ja Morant's team is in the playoffs right now, and Zion's is not. This isn't an indictment on Zion Williamson, who's 20 years old and having a dominating statistical season. But I can't for the life of me figure out why that New Orleans team is as bad as they are. And it comes down to one thing. And I think it's really an interesting dynamic when we look at the big picture. The New Orleans Pelicans have really two guys, but you can add Lonzo Ball in there as a talent, but two really high-level scorers. Zion Williamson is a high-level scorer right now, and Brandon Ingram is a really good scorer. They've got two really high-level scorers, but they don't defend even a little bit. Not a little bit. And you wonder, I'm not suggesting or saying that Zion, Lonzo Ball, and Brandon Ingram are akin to the Brooklyn Nets, but they have a similar philosophy. They score a whole heck of a lot, and they don't defend you a lick. Now, the three scorers in Brooklyn are a lot more accomplished than the three in New Orleans. But you just wonder, as constructed, that New Orleans team, will Zion, and as brilliant as he is, be able to get that team to be a playoff team? They've had some injury issues. I know Lonzo Ball, Ingram, even Williamson himself had the thumb problem. But they had a starting lineup at the beginning of this year with Lonzo Ball, Bledsoe, Ingram, Williamson, and Steven Adams. That's a playoff roster, don't you think? Shouldn't that be a playoff team, New Orleans, with that five right there? And I know they don't have a lot of depth. Their bench is kind of lacking. But when you compare them to the Memphis Grizzlies, who, by the way, came into Philly about a week ago and blitzed them. And you were probably looking at that team and saying, who the heck are these guys? Ja Morant, Dillon Brooks, Valanciunas is a player. They're not even really, I think Jaren Jackson's still hurt. But you would probably, if I just said pick a team, who you taking, and you had Zion, Ingram, Ball, Bledsoe, and Adams, I think almost everybody out there would say, I'll take them. But for whatever reason, they're not a playoff team. And they're not going to be a playoff team, by the way. Which is why tonight Philadelphia has to capture this game. They have got, even though you're on the road, this is not a good basketball team. They've lost 2 in a row. Doesn't matter whether they're at home or away. They're about a 500 team at home. They're worse on the road. Right now, they're 5 games back of Memphis for the 8th spot in the West. Doesn't mean they can't make up a 5-game deficit with about 20 games to play. But this is the kind of game that if the Sixers want to be the number 1 seed, they have got to get this game tonight. And it behooves them to be the number 1 seed. And here's why. Right now, Brooklyn's a half game up on you. Fine. They play Wednesday next week. That could determine a lot of stuff. But when push comes to shove, the playoffs are set. Right now, how about this juicy little first-round matchup, everybody? Brooklyn, the 1 seed, would take on New York, the 8 seed. Not a whole heck of a lot of traveling in that one. Philadelphia, the 2, would play Boston, the 7. How about it? Boy, the Eastern Conference would be filled with some juicy ones. Brooklyn against New York, Philadelphia against Boston. And how about this one? The Milwaukee Bucks, who have been disappointing in the playoffs for 3 straight seasons now, would face the defending Eastern Conference champion Miami Heat in round 1. Wow. The Eastern Conference would be just dripping with drama. I guarantee the NBA is saying, can we hit the pause button and have those matchups right there for our first round? And then you got a little Southeast Charlotte-Atlanta matchup down there that, by the way, no one would care about. How about Charlotte, though, without Ball, has kind of hung around in this mix? But you get a first round of Brooklyn versus the Knicks, Philadelphia against Boston, Milwaukee against Miami. Really fun matchups right there. But here's the difference. Brooklyn as the 1 seed would get the winner of the 4-5 game between Charlotte and Atlanta, and Philadelphia as the 2 seed would get the winner of Milwaukee against Miami. Which one would you rather have? Exactly. The 1 seed is paramount right now. And if you're the 3 seed right now, you'd get Miami in the first round. Anybody want to sign up for that? Because I know I don't. And if you win that one, you'd get Milwaukee in the second round. So your path to get to a championship, if you're the 3 seed, is Miami, Milwaukee, and then Brooklyn. That's pretty tough. If you're the 2 seed, your path would be Boston, Milwaukee, and then Brooklyn. But if you're the 1 seed, it's a lot different. It would be New York, Charlotte, and Atlanta, and then most likely Brooklyn. Isn't that a lot different path? The number 1 seed in the East right now, the Sixers, have to get it. If they want to make it to the finals, they have got to be the number 1 seed. And in order to do so, they have got to win games like tonight against the New Orleans Pelicans. There's no more Tuesday nights in February. They're done. Because now it's real. Now you're in the guts of the game, as Mark Zumoff would say. And those guts of the game is for that number 1 seed. You got to get it. I just mapped it out for you. It's pretty eye-opening when you hear the difference between the 1, 2, and 3 seed. Philly's not going to be a 4. They're 8.5 games up on the 4 seed. So it's 1, 2, or 3. But the difference between 1, 2, and 3 couldn't be any more different. The 1 seed clearly has the easiest path. The 2 seed, it lightens up just a little bit. That 3 seed's a disaster situation for any team. If the standings are as right now, as we sit here on the Friday show, if the standings are the way they are now, that's what I'm talking about. Now, these things could change because 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, and 10 for that matter, they're all really between 3 and 4. Charlotte is 4 games up on the 9 seed Indiana. So Charlotte could go from 4 to out. I don't know that would happen. You only have about 20 games left. I think Philadelphia, let's see what they got left here, just to kind of confirm how many games. I think they have about 20 games left on the schedule, but let's make sure that we get that right. I think it's about 20 because yesterday we figured out George Hill, if he plays 10 games, he'd be missing the rest of the month of April. So this is what Philadelphia has left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. They have 21 games left. So Sixers have 21 games left. It's going to be hard to lose 4 games in the standings with 21 games left unless you completely crap your pants. Does happen, Josh. Does happen. But in the Eastern Conference right now, it's razor sharp. I mean, it's so close. Boston is 500. They're 2 games up on the 9 seed. New York is 1 game up on Indiana and 2 games up on Chicago. They're the 8. They're the 9 and the 10. So the play-in game situation. And then you got the Miami Heat, who yesterday we had Keith Smith on, and he talked about the 2 teams that might, you could have a Miami-Boston situation. Right now, Charlotte, Atlanta, and Miami are all tied. They're all 9 games back. They're all exactly identical. Some tiebreakers are going this way, that Charlotte's the 4, Atlanta's the 5, and Miami's the 6. Boston's just a game back of those teams. So this whole thing could jumble up and change. But I'll tell you what's not really changing. The fact that the number 1 seed will have the easiest path to get there. Now, that's not, holy mackerel. That's earth-shattering news. But what it is this team has a shot to win right now. The Philadelphia 76ers. The last couple of years, if you in your heart of hearts believed that the Sixers were a championship team, I'm not going to blame you. But if you ever listened to me, I told you they weren't really ready to win. When your two best players are your two youngest players, I can't believe that they're an NBA championship team. Now I can. Why? Because as I've told you over the years, the Sixers have the best player on the best team. He's not the number one player, but he has a guy that at the end of this conversation in July, we could say, who won the championship? They had a player that was the best player on the best team. And there's about 5 of them in the league, maybe 3. You know them. LeBron James, Kevin Durant, and that's about it. So Brooklyn can win. Giannis Antetokounmpo, I think he still needs to add a little bit more to his game, but you want to throw him into that mix, fine. You can say the Bucks. It's Durant, it's LeBron, and it's Joel Embiid. They're the 3. They're the 3 most legitimate, and Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard is on that list. He's 4, and like I said, there might be 5. Antetokounmpo. They're the legitimate NBA championship level teams right now. I don't think the Suns are ready because Devin Booker, I'm not sure that he could be the best player on the team that wins the whole thing. I don't know that Donovan Mitchell can be the best player on the team that wins the whole thing. They could prove me wrong, but right now I'm going to go with the 5 guys that I brought up. At the end of the year, if one of those 5 teams wins a championship, you could say, why did they win? They had LeBron James. Why did they win? They had Kevin Durant. Why did they win? They had Joel Embiid. Why did they win? They had Giannis Antetokounmpo. Why did they win? They had Kawhi Leonard. That's why. That's why. All right, Sports Bash Live. That's where we start today's show. However, we got so much to do. Dan Schulman, Sunday Night Baseball, going to join me at 2:40 today. Talk a little Phils. They're on the Sunday Night Baseball game this week. We'll have that for you on 97.3 ESPN. Coming up, I will, Philip, let's talk fishing, Mike. I like to wet a line there, Phil. Little tog out there for you. Bite pretty good. Phil, I would love to sit and wet a line and have a couple of cold ones one day. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. Don't forget, 3 o'clock today, Sal Pal, get the app. If you're not going to be near your radio, you can watch us on your app. You can watch us on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And I got 3 4-packs of Flyers tickets today. 3 4-packs of Flyers tickets today, right here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. They're for Sunday's game against Buffalo. Listen for your chance to score those 4-packs of tickets. So we got the poll question up at 973 ESPN. Zion versus Embiid tonight. Who you taking to start your franchise? First ever meeting. Who you taking? Right now, Embiid, 88%. Which I'm a little surprised by because I feel like Zion has more of the PR, marketing push behind him than Joel does. Not that Joel doesn't have like his own, he's in some commercials too, but Zion is just everywhere. Although I feel like I don't see him as much as I thought I would see him. I don't know. Is Zion in any like national commercials that I'm kind of forgetting about? I don't see him like in like every commercial. I see Jason Tatum in a commercial. Who the hell knows who Jason Tatum is, by the way? Right. I know the commercial. I'm just saying, like, how many people see that commercial and are like, oh, that's Jason Tatum? I mean, heck, Draymond Green's in that commercial, too. He's more recognizable than Tatum is. Why? Yes, Zion does the Gatorade commercial. Yes. By the way, I'm speaking of that. Thank you for bringing that up. So, how about this? Okay, a couple things just popped in my mind. I'm writing them down because I'll forget. One, professional sports need to do something about the uniform problem they're going through right now. I was watching highlights today of a game. The Utah Jazz are the number 1 seed in the league. There was a highlight on the game on ESPN Sports Center, and I was like, who the hell are these two teams playing? Well, I knew the one team, Portland. You know why? Because they had the Trailblazers uniforms on. The Utah Jazz were wearing some green and yellow uniform. I'm like, who the hell is this? The Jazz are not green and yellow. Last night, I'm watching the Lakers game against the Miami Heat. Now, the Miami Heat, that's a whole different animal. It's Miami. Nobody cares. Like, you go to a game down there, no one cares about the Heat. They're just kind of there. So they can wear whatever the heck they want because no one cares about the Heat. But they have, like, their Miami Vice uniforms on. It's cute, whatever. They're playing the Lakers. You're the Lakers. For God's sakes, you're the Lakers. Be the Lakers. If you're going to be the Lakers, be the Lakers. The Lakers were wearing gray uniforms last night. Gray. Gray and purple. I know you're like, dude, who cares? Dude, you're the Lakers. Just like, did anybody watch the Sixers game the other night? The Boston Celtics had 3 different greens uniforms on. They had like a forest green, an electric green. I mean, what? Dude, you're the Celtics. You're not the Oregon Ducks. You're the Celtics. You're the Lakers. Pro sports has to stop with these uniforms. They need to stop. The identity of these great franchises are the Utah Jazz. I didn't even know who they were. They're wearing green and yellow. They look like the Celtics on Christmas Day. And those are bad uniforms. The Boston Red Sox, for God's sakes, are going to wear uniforms next week or whenever it is that are going to be blue and yellow. Blue and yellow, the Red Sox. The Lakers had gray uniforms on last night. Does this annoy anybody else? My gosh, you're the Lakers. No gimmick. Lakers. Like, if anything, I'm not a Lakers fan. I'm not a Yankees fan. But the Yankees, at least, for everything, they know who they are. You don't see the Yankees coming out there. For God's sakes, I hope not. They're not wearing the 1986 Houston Astro looking uniforms. That's for a high school team to emulate. You know, high school teams, they go through the fads. A couple of years ago, all the high schools were wearing the Houston Astro uniforms from like 1986. Yeah. That's not for the Yankees. And for God's sakes, it's not for the Lakers. It's not for the Celtics. Of all the teams, let the Miami Heat do that. Let the Memphis Grizzlies. Let these teams that have nothing else going for them come up with that uniform. Not you. The Charlotte Hornets could put them on and no one would know because they're never on. I had a game on last night. I'm like, who the hell are the Heat playing? They're wearing gray. The Lakers had gray on. Heck, I don't even like when the Lakers wear the white uniforms. The Lakers are gold and purple. That's who they are. You're the Lakers. Stop wearing the white and please don't wear the gray. Those Celtics uniforms on Tuesday night were hideous. And again, I'm not a Celtic fan, but I appreciate the history of the games. The Lakers and the Celtics are 2 of the great organizations in basketball. I mean, even the Dallas Cowboys aren't dumb enough to change what they do. Star on the helmet. Next thing you know, they're going to take the guy who's on the side of the Oklahoma State Cowboys helmet and put that on there. No, you're the Cowboys. You have a star. That's who you are. I will say this. It's pretty cool. If you've ever been to spring training, totally different subject. These are the random thoughts that popped into my head during the break. If you've ever been to spring training, the stadiums are like going to a surf game. If you ever went to a surf game over at Sandcastle Stadium. I would actually say the stadium where the Blue Jays play might be smaller than Sandcastle Stadium. I could be wrong. They might be comparable. It's not much bigger. It's not much smaller, if anything. The Blue Jays are playing their games in Dunedin right now because they can't go to Canada because of the pandemic. So they're playing in Dunedin, which I would describe Dunedin as a Cape May-ish type of town. Here is a professional baseball team playing in Dunedin. It's awesome. I've been there before. It's akin to like parking on somebody's lawn. You literally park on somebody's lawn. You pay the lady like $3. They watch your car. And when you get it, they kind of shift them and move around for you. Mike Trout is playing a game in Dunedin last night. Think about that. Mike Trout is playing a regular season baseball game in Dunedin last night. Pretty cool. That's way cooler than the Lakers uniform and the Celtics uniforms. It's a Sports Bash Live 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Coming up, the Phillies are red hot to start the season. They'll play on Sunday Night Baseball. So Dan Schulman will call the game. What has he seen so far from this Phillies team that makes it feel different from the team from the last couple of years? Sports Bash brought to you by Matt Black Kia. At Matt Black Kia, they want to get you approved today. Matt Black Kia, Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township. ESPN play-by-play voice Dan Schulman calls Phillies Braves Sunday Night Baseball this weekend on 97.3 ESPN. And he joins me next here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. And don't forget, you can watch the show live through Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. Just search 973 ESPN. Sunday Night Baseball right here on 97.3 ESPN. Phillies and Braves this weekend. Dan Schulman, the voice of Sunday Night Baseball, alongside ESPN MLB analyst Chris Singleton. The coverage begins at 6 o'clock right here on 97.3 ESPN. Phil's 5-1 swept the Braves in the opening series. They travel to Atlanta tonight to kick that thing off, the Sunday night game, right here on 97.3 ESPN. Dan Schulman will call it. He joins me now here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline on 97.3 ESPN. A little early season Phillies Braves. And Dan, I'll tell you, this is a lot different Phillies team than the one that we saw the last couple of years. And one of the key reasons is that bullpen seems to be a actual major league bullpen. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing a lot better than Joe Girardi did last year whenever he had to signal to the bullpen. One of my other jobs is doing Blue Jays games. So I saw a couple of games that were great for the Blue Jays, not so much for the Phillies. There was a doubleheader, you might remember, in August of last year, and that bullpen was historically bad. I think the group ERA was over 7 or something like that. So, it's really early, 6 games in, but they've been really good in 5 of them. And, the acquisition of Bradley and Alvarado, Coonrod, like they've got some better arms this year. You just can't win these days without a good bullpen because it's not like starters are throwing complete games. You got to get guys at the end of games to get you some outs.
Yeah, there's no question that, a lot of people would say, look, if their bullpen was just halfway better, they had a 7 ERA. If they were just in the mid 3s, upper 3s, maybe 4s last year, they probably are a playoff team. So, Dan, when you look at this Phillies team in your prep for this Sunday night matchup, do you say, look, this lineup's the same as last year for the most part. They added Bohm for the whole year now, so that should even be a little bit of a boost. The starting rotation's solid. If the bullpen's just better, are you looking at a playoff team?
I think potentially. I think the National League East is a fascinating division. Atlanta's obviously not gotten off to a good start, but you got to respect the talent that they've got and what they've done the last few years, and I think they're going to make some noise. The Mets made some obvious upgrades in the offseason, so they're going to make some noise. And I wouldn't count Washington out. They're a lot different than they were in some respects than they were a couple of years ago when they won the World Series. But I think the Phillies are in the conversation for sure. But, one thing we all have to remember, and I know you do, is that 8 teams made the playoffs last year. Only 5 will make the playoffs this year. So it's going to be hard. If San Diego is good enough to be a solid wild card team behind the Dodgers, and, whoever wins the Central, that means 2 teams at most are coming out of the East. Or are the Phillies good enough to finish in the top 2 in the National League East? Possibly, yeah, but I don't think it's a lock. The bullpen's got to be good. And I'm still curious about the rotation. Love Nola, love Wheeler. And if this is Eflin, then it's a great top 3. Still wondering a little bit about the 4-5 in the rotation with Chase Anderson and Matt Moore, and whether those will be the guys to take them through the whole season. Saw a lot of Chase Anderson last year with Toronto, obviously. So there are still some question marks, but there are question marks on just about every team unless you're the Dodgers.
Oh, yeah, it's early, but obviously the big difference for the Phils is this bullpen, and obviously they're not scoring a whole heck of a lot, just 4 runs per game. They've had a lot of close games. The first series against Atlanta, they were all tightly contested, 3-2, 2-1, 4-0. So this should be a pretty interesting series, but I guess, the Phillies swept the Braves a couple of years ago. The Braves went on to win the division. This Braves team, a lot of people think, other than the Dodgers, this might be the next best team in the National League.
Yeah, I think it's possible. And again, they're off to a slow start. And they got some bad news about Mike Soroka that he's not going to be back anytime soon. But I think, again, they've got too much talent to not be better than they've shown. When you've got Freeman and you've got Ozuna, and you've got Acuna, and you've got Albies, you've got some real star power, some firepower, and they're going to hit better than they have. Freddie Freeman's going to hit better. Albies is going to hit better. Ozuna's going to hit better. It's an incredibly small sample size. If you forced me right now, pick who's going to win the National League East, I think I would still pick Atlanta. But it is great for the how about the start to the Philly schedule? Atlanta, the Mets, Atlanta, the Mets. Right, the first 2 weeks is nothing but that in the National League East. So if you want to get like a good barometer on how good your team is against the teams you're going to be competing with all season, the Phillies are certainly getting that.
Yeah, Dan Schulman will call Sunday Night Baseball. It'll be the Phillies and the Braves. This pitching matchup this series, it's Wheeler Morton tonight, Eflin Anderson tomorrow, and Matt Moore and Drew Smiley. Yes, that former Philly Drew Smiley who had a cup of coffee here. That is the pitching matchup on Sunday night. Now, you mentioned doing the Blue Jays games. Are you in Dunedin with them right now?
I am not. So we have a complicated situation because of the border. We have 3 announcers, myself, Buck Martinez, Pat Tabler, and any 2 of us will be on the game at any time. Buck lives in Florida. Tabby lives in Ohio. I live in Toronto. Nobody's crossing borders right now. So Buck and Tabby are doing the games, the Dunedin games, from the ballpark. And then the road games, I'm doing it from a studio in Toronto, and Buck and Tabby both have a setup in their house, and one of them joins me, either or, is with me for the road games. So listen, I'm thrilled to be working, and they're, it could be going a lot of different ways, but the Blue Jays, this lovable little team that I've been, following and calling for most of my life, because of the border situation, the team has some issues, and we've got some issues.
Right.
So to answer your question, no, I'm not in Dunedin. I'm as of now, I'm doing all the road games. If they get back to Toronto later in the year, the whole thing could flip, and maybe I do the home games. Maybe the border's open by then. But, as you can imagine, we're kind of on like a month-to-month basis. Right?
Wow. So that's interesting because I knew someone that was at the game in Dunedin last night because obviously Mike Trout is from our area. So a lot of people like to travel and watch him play. I said, it's got to be pretty neat. Now, you're not there, but to see Mike Trout play a regular season game in that little ballpark where you're parking on some lady's yard and paying her $2 to go park.
Right. Well, he hit a ball, I think, into the yard of the elementary school across the street over the left field fence last night. That doesn't happen in Citizens Bank. That doesn't happen at Rogers Center or anything like that. And not only is it a spring training town, like Dunedin is a small, sleepy, quaint spring training town. Like, we're not talking. It's different than Clearwater. It's different than Sarasota. The Blue Jays have been there since 1977, and they've done everything they can to upgrade the ballpark this year, just like they did in Buffalo last year, their AAA ballpark, where they're likely going to wind up, I think, again, middle of the season. They're not going to stay in Dunedin all year. It gets too hot. It rains too much. So I think they'll be out of Florida by June. They're hoping to come right to Toronto, but I wouldn't bet on it. So I think they're going to wind up in Buffalo, and then they could wind up in Toronto. Who knows, August, September. They might have 3 different homes this year.
Wow, yeah. It's funny. It's like you're sitting at the Dunedin Smokehouse over there, and here comes the Mike Trout baseball bouncing down the street. It's a pretty unique situation down there. That American League East, though, speaking of Toronto, you've got, you said this cute little team. That's not a cute little team. This team's pretty darn good.
They are pretty darn good, and they're not off to a great start, but I was just being tongue-in-cheek about it. But yeah, they can really score runs. The Phillies saw that last year, played them 6 games, I think, last year. And they can really score runs, and then they go out and they add Springer and Simeon. Now, Springer hasn't played yet. Had an oblique injury and now has a quad situation, and he's out at least another week. And a lot of guys who hit really well last year, like Teoscar Hernandez, Lourdes Gurriel, Cavan Biggio, they're not hitting yet. But again, 7 games. It's an incredibly small sample size. So the issue for them is going to be pitching. They've got an ace in Hyunjin Ryu, who's just terrific. But after that, it's a lot of, kind of guys trying to get back to where they were, projects, I guess, if you will. And they've got some injuries. Nate Pearson and Thomas Hatch, Robbie Ray is out right now. Tanner Roark had an awful first start. I'm not sure how long they're going to stay with him. He had an awful year last year. Bullpen is good. Bullpen is deep and a lot of big velocity guys. But for them, I think it's going to be the starting pitching that determines whether or not they're a playoff team.
Now, you just mentioned Dan Schulman's our guest from Sunday Night Baseball. You just mentioned velocity and that. Is that something you've been calling games for a long time? Is that something that has changed the most maybe from the game is the fact that every guy is throwing. It used to be if you're like 94, 95, that guy throws hard. Now these guys, Alvarado comes in the other night and he's 101. It's almost every, if you're not 95 and up, you're out.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, the Blue Jay bullpen was full of 88 to 92, and it just didn't work. And
Dan, the Phillies bullpen has been 88 to 92 my whole life.
I first started calling games in 1995, and back then, when you said a guy threw 90, you meant that as a compliment. Now it's like an insult. Now it's on the other side, especially if you're coming out of the bullpen. The Blue Jays have a lefty, Ryan Barucki, who as a starter was throwing 91. Now as a reliever, he's throwing 97. And he's embraced the change to the bullpen because he realizes he's got a better chance probably of being successful in this role. It's analytics has changed a dozen different things, at least in baseball. But one of them is everybody understands that velocity plays, that the way to win ball games is to strike people out, is to get swings and misses. Hitters are too good. They're too strong. They get the ball in the air too much. You got to minimize contact as much as you can. And for most guys, unless you're a Kyle Hendricks or a Hyunjin Ryu or somebody like that, the best way to minimize contact is to throw as hard as you can. Unfortunately, and this is just my opinion, I think throwing as hard as you can is one of the reasons why guys are getting hurt so much. I mean, I'm getting up there in years right now, but I remember 4-man rotations and guys throwing 270 innings back in the 80s. Like that happened. And I don't think everybody was a max effort guy all the time. They were pitching to contact. Guys were hitting the ball on the ground. They were getting ground outs. They were throwing complete games with 106 pitches. Like, that doesn't happen. Lance Lynn threw a shutout yesterday, and it was almost like a national holiday. Like, everybody talked about it so much. So, the game is totally different than it used to be. But yeah, velocity is certainly one of the biggest differences that we've seen.
It really is, and we talk a lot. It's funny because I coach baseball and I pitch, and people are like, "Well, how hard did you throw?" And 10 years ago, I'd say, I used to hit 89 on the gun, and people are like, "That's pretty good," And now I'd be like, "That's all you threw was 89 miles an hour." It's like, man. But the velocity is so different. But the game itself, the launch angle and the exit velocity. I mean, how much do you kind of buy into all that and how it is impacted where this game is today?
Well, it's impacted the game tremendously. I mean, it's a very different sport than it was 15, 20, 25 years ago. Again, going back to the 80s, 70s, I remember teams like the St. Louis Cardinals and the Kansas City Royals totally built on speed, defense, and pitching. Totally built on speed, defense, and pitching. And now, power plays, and power is the way to win. And I understand, it's very smart people crunching numbers and coming up with, hey, this is the best way to win ball games. I don't think it's as aesthetically pleasing a game. I like speed and defense and athleticism and things like that, and I'd like to see the ball in play a little bit more. And I don't think I'm yelling at clouds or get off my lawn or anything like that. And I think it's going to swing back a little bit in that direction. But it is a very different game. You go back and look at guys like Tom Seaver and Jim Palmer, like Hall of Fame guys, and their strikeout rates were like 6 per 9, 7 per 9. Now a number 4 starter, a sub 500 guy striking out a batter an inning. It's just a totally different sport. Guys are not afraid to strike out. There's no shame in striking out as a hitter. I mean, you swing hard, even at 2 strikes. Like when I was in the 80s, when I was a teenager, every single number 2 hitter in the game, every single number 2 hitter was a little guy, a middle infielder who would hit the ball to the right side or bunch over. Every single guy. Now your number 2 hitter often is your best hitter on the team because that's what the analytics have said, right? And I'm not knocking analytics at all. Like, being smarter is a good thing, and teams are trying to find a way to be smarter and exploit advantages that they may have and to win different ways. The opener is another example of it, right? Like Tampa Bay doing it like crazy 2-3 years ago, and other teams have done it since. The Blue Jays are doing it in their game tonight. So it's really manifested itself in many, many ways. And some stick and some don't. But with the amount of information that's out there these days, it's easy for people to say, in most cases, hey, this works and this doesn't. Sometimes I think there's some gray area and some subtlety and some nuance that's lost. This isn't blackjack. You can't say, hit on 16, hold on 17. It doesn't work like that 100% of the time. It might work most of the time, but it doesn't work like that all the time.
Dan Schulman will call Sunday Night Baseball with Chris Singleton, 6 o'clock Sunday night right here on 97.3 ESPN. It's the Phillies and the Braves. By the way, every 2-hitter is Placido Polanco. That's who a 2-hitter is.
That's right.
He's the only one that ever was created to be the 2-hitter. Dan, appreciate you chiming in, man, and catching up, and we'll be listening on Sunday Night Baseball.
All right. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Dan Schulman, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Sunday Night Baseball here on 97.3 ESPN. It's the Phillies and the Braves. And Dan and Chris will have the call on 97.3 ESPN. So Sunday, to map it out for you, we got a good day for you. Flyers in Buffalo the day before the trade deadline at 2 o'clock, followed by the Phillies and the Braves at 6 o'clock right here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, coming up next. How has Howie Roseman handled the offseason so far? I'll ask Sal Paolantonio coming up next. Yes, it's a Sal Pal Friday leading you to the draft, 20 days away from the draft. And Sal Pal's back. The NFL Draft on 97.3 ESPN. First round coverage is April 29th at 7 o'clock. And Sal Pal joins me next. Stick around. I got a Sports Bash Cash code word for you. It's worth $1,000, and it's coming up right now.
Codes you enter, the more chances you have to win. Up to $10,000. Here's the Sports Bash Cash code word.
Milk. M-I-L-K. Milk. Enter it now on our website, 973ESPN.com, or use the free mobile app. Sports Bash Cash is brought to you by Jersey Shore Federal Credit Union for all your lending needs. Get the next Sports Bash Cash code word at 355.
It's Sports Bash Cash 10 times a day. Every weekday at 55 after each hour from 9:55 a.m. to 6:55 p.m. Listen all day for your chance to win Sports Bash Cash. Up to $10,000.
All right, second hour of the show here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. And don't forget, you can watch the show live at 97.3ESPN.com through Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Watch the live stream. We'll answer your questions on the chat. And right now, answering our questions is ESPN's NFL reporter Sal Paolantonio, as he joins us here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. And he is back for a Sal Pal Friday, thanks to Johnny G and the Berger Real Estate team, Griner team at Berger Realty, 35 years of excellence in Ocean City and in Upper Township. Sal Pal is back. It's April. That means Sal Pal on the Sports Bash. How are you?
I'm great, Mike Gill. I'm doing fantastic. Thanks to Johnny G. I'm back with you on the Sports Bash. And we're only a couple of weeks, 3 weeks away from the NFL draft.
20 days to the NFL draft, and I want to get some takes from you on that, but it's been about a month since we caught up, so we got a lot of things to kind of pick your brain on, and I guess I want to start with this one. So far, how has Howie Roseman handled the offseason?
Well, I mean, the trading of Carson Wentz got them a possible first-round pick next year, and that's pretty good. So, I mean, they had painted themselves into a corner, and they needed to find a way out of it. And I think he extricated himself pretty well, considering that Carson Wentz was adamant that he did not want to come back. So that's one. Two, I'm not really in agreement with the idea of moving back from 6 to 12. I think this Eagles team needs blue chip college players. If you look at the two teams that were in the Super Bowl, the Chiefs back-to-back, the Tampa Bay Bucks, you look at those two teams, they are filled with blue-chip players picked high in the first round, with the exception of Tom Brady, players who have speed, who are young, and you have to get younger, faster, and stronger in the NFL, especially the Philadelphia Eagles at 4-11-1. Now, they're going to get a good player at 12 if they stay at 12. But I would have liked to see them stay at 6 and get really a top 10 player.
You said if they stay at 12, would you be surprised if Roseman moved them out of that spot again?
I'm never surprised. Howie Roseman likes to wheel and deal on draft day. He may go up, he may go down. They may have a player they're targeting. They may just sit there and let a good player drop in their lap. My biggest issue is that they're behind the Cowboys for the second straight year now. And the Cowboys picked a blue chip player last year in CeeDee Lamb. And they're going to get another one. Mm-hmm. And they may get another one at a position that the Eagles really, really need. They're going to have a cover 2 defense, thank God. And they're going to rely a lot on their corners. And they've got to find somebody opposite Darius Slay. And I think they need to get a blue chip corner prospect on this football team. Pick one of them. I think they're all pretty good. But, if the Cowboys get the first one and the Eagles don't, that would be a disappointment, I think, to a lot of Eagles fans.
Now, you just said something interesting about Jonathan Gannon's defense, cover 2 defense. Do you think that they're going to come in, Jonathan Gannon and Nick Sirianni, and have a lot of pull on draft day to say, this is my defense, I need a corner?
Yes, especially on defense. I think that Jonathan Gannon was specifically brought in here as a major difference between him and Jim Schwartz. The wide 9 is gone. The single high safety is probably will be extinct for the most part. You will see 2 safeties back. They will protect the house and try to break down the protection a la Jim Johnson. And they will rely on their corners to cover. And they're going to want big corners who can tackle.
Yeah, well, they better not use the guys they currently have.
Right. So they need a corner. I think the number one need on this team right now is a corner.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
No question.
They don't have a starting corner opposite Slay, in my view, considering the defense they're going to run. I think they have a major issue at left tackle. We don't know what we're getting in terms of Andre Dillard coming back from that arm injury. Jordan Mailata played well enough to stay clean to the position, which is not good because Dillard was a first-round pick. And they don't really have an X receiver in Nick Sirianni's offense. If you're going into this season with Travis Fulgham as your X receiver, that's going to be challenging for Jalen Hurts.
That would be a very interesting conundrum at 12 if they're there and a receiver is on the board and a corner is on the board. Then what do you do?
I take the corner. It's a greater need. And, if you look at some of the receivers that, are there in the first round who are first-round talent, you already have one in Jalen Reagor. Reagor's the same size as a Waddle.
Well, here's another question then. If a player is starting to drop, you just mentioned you have both New York and Dallas sitting right in front of you at 10 and 11. It's going to be tough to jump over one of those two teams, right? Because they're not going to deal with Philadelphia. You're not going to call up New York or Dallas on draft day and say, hey, can I have 10? I'll give you 12. That's not happening.
Well, the natural spot is 8.
Okay.
The natural spot is 8. Now that Matt Rule has Sam Darnold, if he doesn't like any of the quarterbacks that are dropping at 8, and the Eagles really want one of those corners, and so do the Cowboys, then the Eagles and the Cowboys are on the phone with Matt Rule and Carolina.
Yeah.
And let the bidding begin. Okay.
Well, how about this scenario then? Sal Paolantonio, ESPN, with me here. One of those quarterbacks, they now that Carolina has one, they get to 12, and there's one there for Howie Roseman. Does Roseman say, got to take him, or is he satisfied with what he already has?
Oh man, I don't know, Mike Gill. That's a tough decision right there. I don't see him taking a quarterback. There are people who do believe that he still would. I know some people think that he likes Mac Jones, but I can't see it happening. They just gave pretty good backup money to Joe Flacco.
Yep.
The owner just said through Chris Mortensen, a report that I absolutely believe, that he wants the best in the business and has been for 3 decades, that the owner wants to build around Jalen Hurts. And this is why I'm skeptical of these reports that the Eagles are in the market to trade for Deshaun Watson.
Right. Actually, it was next on my list right here is that today it says if there's one team to watch closely as a destination for Watson, it would be the Eagles. As one league source explains it, the Eagles are sufficiently determined to upgrade the team that they would pursue Watson if the window opens for doing so. That is from Mike Florio at Pro Football Talk, that the Eagles would be one team that still has their eyes on this thing. And this thing is, who knows what's going to happen with this?
Well, you know how much I respect Mike Florio. I think he's super plugged in. Pro Football Talk is literally the number one website that I go to every day. And I just think, if he's put it out there, it has this, if there's smoke, there's fire. But, I'm skeptical because of the fact that they did sign Flacco. Lurie said basically on background through Chris Mortensen or somebody close to Lurie that they're going to build around Jalen Hurts. The other thing, too, is, if you look at Jeffrey Lurie, he's a deeply liberal person concerned with the rights of women. His master's in psychology from Boston University, a PhD in social policy from Brandeis, and his PhD dissertation, Mike, was entitled The Depiction of Women in Hollywood Movies. He's always been concerned about women's rights and the depiction of women in the media specifically. And that's an interesting reconciliation that he'll have to make. I realize they brought in Michael Vick, but this is different.
Yeah. Yeah, this one's, I agree with you. This is different. Mike Vick, he did give him the second chance. And that you mentioned how liberal he is. He is about giving people second chance, but you talked about his dissertation here. This is something that seemed to hit him a little bit differently than maybe that situation. So,
yeah, I think it's something that you have to put into the hopper, but that's not to throw, extinguish the report from Florio. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying that if they do that, he's going to have to reconcile these two diametrically opposed concepts.
Well, that's something.
There's the other issue of you just got rid of a quarterback $130 million quarterback who talked his way out of town. Do you want to bring in another quarterback, $130 million quarterback who's talked his way out of town?
Yeah.
I get he's a once in a generation talent, but you'll have to mortgage your future. And you'll really have to set aside a lot of the values that you have, depending on what happens in Houston. So I think it's a bank shot. It's a major bank shot.
Hey, Sal, I mean, the team did bring in a couple of veterans, Anthony Harris and Eric Wilson. These aren't two guys who just, were roaming the streets. These guys both can play. Were you surprised that they were able to get two players that are going to be starting caliber players in here in free agency?
It shows that they're really doing their homework. It shows that they're really combing through the NFL right now, trying to pick and choose some guys. And they're not making major commitments to them. But, they're plugging serious holes that they have on the team. And like I said, they're going to play cover too. They can't have enough safeties on this football team.
Anthony Harris, by the way, was with Jonathan Gannon. It was in Minnesota, I should say, 2017. Yep. So he knows both these guys pretty well. Now, yesterday, I had Lane Johnson on the show. I actually asked him if he would be interested in playing left tackle. Is that something that you could see them doing? Because you mentioned that you think they have a big problem at left tackle. Do you think they say, Lane Johnson, how about you play? Because he said he actually admitted that playing left tackle, that he would be more respected, he thinks, than being a right tackle.
Well, I've always advocated that they move Lane Johnson to left tackle. And this is the first that I've heard from Lane Johnson saying he would go there. Has he said it in the past? Not to my knowledge.
He basically, he said, he acknowledged, he said, I actually have the bite. I can play it for you if you want to hear it. Here we go.
If I would have played left tackle, I feel like I probably would have maybe had a better career. I feel like you get more respect at left tackle. That's why you have guys like Orlando Brown moving to left tackle because they won't.
So, yeah, there you go. He mentioned that you get more respect by playing left tackle, and basically if they needed me to, that I would do it. I mean, he said he's never really been asked before, but I actually asked him.
Well, I think he's a warrior, Lane Johnson. He's certainly a leader on the team. If they asked him and he went over there, I think he'd do a terrific job. He's got to stay healthy. That ankle's got to stay healthy.
Yep.
But moving Mailata to right tackle and Lane Johnson to left, and then Dillard as a sling guard, starting at right guard with Brandon Brooks coming back from an injury, that would be a significant upgrade, don't you think?
Which is why, I and Sal, you remember the 2012 team, Andy's last year. The offensive line had 4 guys got hurt that year. That season turned into a mess. They fire Andy. They bring Chip in. Well, the next year they won 10 games. Well, it helped that the whole offensive line returned the next year, and they drafted Lane Johnson. That offensive line was a huge difference in them going from 4 wins to 10 wins, don't you think?
Yeah, an offensive line has been a central focus around the NFL this offseason, and all you have to do is look at what happened in the Super Bowl. One team protected their quarterback, and the other team did not. And you and I, all last year, talked about the domino effect of what happened last summer. The chief of officials, Walt Coleman, removed offensive holding as a point of emphasis. Offensive holding was down year over year, 2019 to 2020. And as a result of very few offensive holding calls, defensive coordinators said, well, if you're not going to call offensive holding, we got to blitz. Mm-hmm. And blitzing was at a 5-year high in 2020, according to ESPN Stats and Information. So you got to be able to protect the quarterback in the National Football League. And you look at the first thing Andy Reid did is he went out and signed a guard for major money.
Yeah.
So, you got to protect the quarterback. 65 sacks last year the Eagles gave up. Number 1 in the league. Clearly some of that was Carson Wentz's fault. But you had 13 different permutations on the offensive line. And that's going to get your quarterback in trouble.
And
especially a second-year guy like Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I'll leave you with this, Sal. At 12, if one of those linemen there, Do they go offensive line or still corner?
I'm always a big believer in taking the best player on the board. If you draft specifically for need, then you're going to need another job.
All right, so that would be taking the lineman?
Yeah, I would take the best available player.
All right.
Yes, I'm always for taking the best available player.
20 days.
That's why Howie Roseman always, has a penchant for moving down, because he looks at it and says, well, this best available player doesn't really fit what I need. So if I move down a few spaces, I can grab a couple of picks or an extra draft pick, and I can still get the guy that I need. My personal opinion, based on talking to a lot of people in the league over 25 years, is that's not the way to go. I think you have a chance to take a blue chip prospect at 6, you take them. And in the end, you'll wind up with a team of Travis Kelce's, Tyreek Hill's, Patrick Mahomes, and you'll wind up with a team like the Bucks with Levante David and Devin White, first-round picks. And you bring in a Leonard Fournette, a first-round pick. You stock your team with elite players, with speed, strength, size, and youth. And you win games.
Well, they got 11 picks this year. They've got 3 first-rounders potentially next year and $32 million of cap space open for next year. So let's see if they can get this thing right. Of course, they haven't done very well in the draft. 20 days away, the NFL draft right here on 97.3 ESPN. The coverage is April 29th at 7 o'clock on 97.3. And he's Sal Paolantonio, ESPN. And, of course, he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. All right, Sal, it's good to catch up, my man.
It is good. We'll do this every Friday from here out to the draft. Now we're locked in. Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be an intriguing time for the Philadelphia Eagles. No question in my mind.
All right, Sal.
And this is a critical draft and a critical season. This team right now is irrelevant at 4-11-1, and they got to get back in the saddle right away. They're not going to be sitting around, going 4 or 5 wins for 3 or 4 years. That's not the way Howie Roseman operates. He's going to be super aggressive. You watch. They've
had back-to-back losing seasons one time in the last 20 years. So history says back-to-back losing seasons doesn't happen here. So this could be an interesting season here coming up. Sal Pal back next Friday here on the Sports Bash. Sal, have a good weekend, my man.
Okay, brother.
All right. He, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline here on the Sports Bash. When we come back, our guy is here. It's Paul Hudrick, and we'll ask him exactly this. How are the Sixers going to defend Zion tonight? Who gets that? Who gets that assignment? And who would he take? Joel Embiid or Zion Williamson starting the team? 27-year-old Joel or 20-year-old Zion? We got that poll question coming up. Hi, welcome back. Sports Best Live 97.3 ESPN. Sal Powell joining us for the rest of the Fridays in the month of April to the NFL Draft. We appreciate him jumping on board. Sports Best brought to you by Matt Blatt Nissan. The all-new Matt Blatt Nissan is now open on the Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township next to Home Depot, online at mattblattnissan.com. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. It is Happy Hour Friday, and it's time for Inside the Sixers. They got an interesting one tonight. You know, it's the first time that the Sixers and Joel Embiid will see Zion Williamson, and so much Zion hype, and of course, a lot of it is warranted. But Paul Hudrick is with me for Inside the Sixers. Now, I said at the time of the draft that Zion, to me, going to be a tremendous player. Just don't see him changing a franchise the way that LeBron was able to do it. Like, he made the Cavs from dumpster fire to championship. Do you see Zion making the Pelicans a championship-level team, or is he just going to be a fun guy to watch who puts up great numbers on some mediocre teams?
When he first came into the league, I probably would have agreed with you, Mike, more on the side of, like, I think he could be a really good player, and, yeah, definitely a hell of a lot of fun, just with his explosiveness and his size, what he can do at that size. But I think recently, during he's had a recent run here where he's been outstanding. He's almost played like a point guard role. And you're starting to see a little bit more of his skill set. He's really starting to develop the other aspects of his offensive game. So I do think there is a way that he can kind of propel this team. Now, is that with Brandon Ingram? Is that with Lonzo Ball? I think they have a lot of other questions to answer. But as far as, can Zion be the guy? Can he be the kind of centerpiece that could eventually help them kind of elevate their franchise? Yeah, I absolutely think he can. He's still only 20 years old, Mike, so he's still so young. And again, he's developing, he's getting better. You're seeing the progress. So if I'm New Orleans, I'm very excited that I at least have that piece. The other pieces I'm worried about.
I don't hate having him. I just want, it's like mind boggling. Like, I look at Ja Morant and Memphis and say, that was a number 2 pick in that draft, by the way, for the people out there. Why him? They're in the playoffs right now. And if I looked at the two rosters, I would say, well, they got the number 1 pick. They got 2 number 2 overall picks. They got Steven Adams. Why is this team so bad?
I just think Memphis is a better basketball team. New Orleans doesn't defend well. Steven Adams is not the player that he once was, and he's still he's not the modern NBA. He is just not Steven Adams, with all due respect. I think if he's like your backup 5, he could play if he was like a Dwight Howard here, I think he'd be excellent at that role, but I don't think he is suited for the modern NBA big role. He makes way too much money. And then the same thing with Bledsoe. They took on his contract, with the Drew Holiday. They did that in order to make the Drew Holiday trade happen and in order to get those draft picks. So I get why they did that, but he's just, I've always thought he was maybe slightly overrated, and you're really seeing on the defensive end how much he struggled. And that's the big thing, Mike, is they just don't defend very well. And that's the one area where I think the Sixers can really pick on them tonight, is that they just are not a very good defensive team. And to me, that's some individual players that struggle with that, but I think it is a team thing. And I think when you look at Memphis and the way they play defensively as a team, they are much, much better on that end of the floor. And I think that's the biggest difference between New Orleans and Memphis right now.
Paul, I looked at the standings earlier, and I find a game like tonight is very important. I'm a big, hey, it's Tuesday night in January, February. You're going to lose a game here or there. These are the games you can't lose now, because I want to get your take on, when I looked at the pairings, I get it. There's going to be a lot of changes from 4 to 8, but the path from the 1 seed is going to be, it seems, a lot different than the 2 and the 3, because in that second round, if you're the 2 or the 3, you're going to have to face Milwaukee. And if you are the 1, you do not have to face that 2 or 3 until the end of the line. So that's why a game like tonight's important. This is a bad basketball team. You've got to be able to get it, because if you're that 1 seed, you're playing the 4, the 8, and then the 4-5 instead of that 2-3 winner. So you would definitely want to try to get out of that 2 spot and get that 1 spot, which normally there's not that big of a 1 and 2. Okay, I think this year it's different, because that 4-5 is a major drop off from that 2-3.
For sure. The Miami Heat are still certainly a team that I think could get hot. They have pieces that are pretty darn good. Victor Oladipo begins to even just resemble the player that he was, they could be a very interesting team and not the easiest out in the second round. But I think you do raise a great point that it's clearly that those top three teams, the Sixers, the Nets, the Bucks, they are in a class above everyone else at this point. And yeah, this game for me does fall into the category of a game they should win. They've had 2 days off. Joel Embiid is going to play tonight. They should have their full complement outside of George Hill tonight. They should have their full roster available and healthy to play. The back-to-back is tricky because, that's going to be a little tough when they have to play another game tomorrow night. But yeah, to me, this is a game. I understand it's on the road, but like you said, this is not a Pelican team that's very good. They are a little banged up. They have a couple guys questionable, a couple guys out. So this is, to me, yes, it falls into the category of a game they should win. And as you alluded to, all of these games matter. It's not quite there yet, but we are getting to a point where these games are all kind of starting to matter when you're talking about seeding and the fact that the Nets have come back down to earth a little bit. So that's helped the Sixers. But yeah, you want to stay as much as you can, stay in that one seed.
How about these pairings? Like if the NBA could hit the pause button or fast forward, I can't imagine they would want better pairings than you have in the East right now, Paul. You've got Brooklyn against the Knicks in round one, Philadelphia against Boston in round one. You would have Milwaukee against Miami right now in round one. So Milwaukee, who has been the 1 seed, going up against a team that represented the East in the finals last year, the two New Yorks, and then Philly and Boston. I don't think the East could ask for better matchups. The other one would be Charlotte and Atlanta. So it's very interesting. But that 4, 5, 6, and quite frankly, 9 and 10 are still in the mix. This East is going to be ever changing the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, everything from 4 on down could completely flip-flop by the end of the season. And that's why when I say like Miami, like they could very easily go on just get hot, go on a run and just lock up that 4 seed. That seems entirely possible. They're far from out of that. You look at, Charlotte's situation, they're in a lot of trouble with LaMelo out, with Gordon Hayward now out. They're going to be in some trouble. They're going to lose some games. Atlanta, I'm curious to see how they hold up. Nate McMillan has done an excellent job since they let go of Lloyd Pierce, and he's taken the reins there. They've been winning some games. They've gotten healthier as well. Curious to see how they kind of hold up as the stretch run comes and as we kind of get into the nitty-gritty games. And, Boston looks, quite frankly, a little lifeless, but do they have a run in them? They still have 2 very good players in Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Do they have a run in them that could maybe, elevate them? So I think there's still so much that needs to be said. And then, I didn't even mention the Knicks, who play great defense every single night. They can't score, but they play great defense every single night. So that wouldn't be a very fun series for a team. Yes, they would probably, like when you're talking about the top 3 teams, yes, they'd all beat the New York Knicks in a 7-game series. But I can't imagine, think about the Sixers and Knicks games this year. That would not be a fun series. They might sweep the Knicks, but it would be 4 ugly, tough games. There's going to be a lot of moving parts in the Eastern Conference. 4 through 10, like you talked about, is going to be kind of shuffling, I think, throughout.
Now, to my knowledge, the Sixers have not made a roster-filling move today. They did waive what's the gentleman's name?
Ignas Brazdeikis.
Brazdeikis, yes, from the Knicks. He played 7 minutes in a Sixers uniform. He was waived yesterday. They have until today to add a player that would be eligible for the playoffs. So do you think something happens between today and the game tonight?
You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's just the player needs to have been waived by that deadline. So they could sign, if there's a guy out there, they could sign, kind of like they did with Greg Monroe a couple years ago. If a guy is out there before that date,
agent, he could still add him. This player was on a team and was waived.
Right. The guy has to be waived by then in order for him to make up. So any guy who is available now, whenever they sign him, could be. Listen, I think they like that flexibility of having that one open spot. Doc Rivers kind of alluded to that yesterday. Are there some guys that could intrigue them? Maybe. There's some dots I guess you could connect. I don't know if he got signed. I feel bad now if he did. But, Gary Clark is a guy who isn't going to excite people. But he's a guy that maybe, he's a guy that Daryl Morey brought in to Houston. So maybe Daryl Morey sees a fit there. Darius Miller was waived by the Thunder. He can really shoot. Can't do anything else. 6'6", kind of, probably more of a combo forward than anything. But bringing in shooting, I guess, wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to bring in more shooting. So, I mean, I think they like having that flexibility. There's no guarantee they fill the spot, Mike. They might just leave the thing open for all we know. But, a guy like Dwayne Dedman has been signed. Boogie Cousins is on a 10-day. So I don't know. I don't know that they do anything 100%, but they're going to leave that open to kind of give them that flexibility in case a guy comes along that they might have interest in.
Yeah, I know. They have the one spot open, so they'll continue to kick around. And then, of course, George Hill actually spoke yesterday, and I don't. He gave the indication, I guess, that he'll be back sooner than later. Is that how you read it? I mean, because we've been saying Doc said 10 games. If by my calculations they have 21 games left, that would mean, Paul, he wouldn't really be playing a game until April 30th. Would be the 10 games left in the season, which means the next 3 weeks he'd still be sitting out. We'd still be saying, hey, what's going on with George Hill? So do you anticipate he would play more than just the 10 games?
I think so. And listen, everyone, please don't come back and kill me on Twitter for saying this, but I just feel like when
Hudrick,
when Doc said that 10 games, he said at least 10 games. So I think he was looking more on the pessimistic side. He was kind of trying. He didn't want to get anyone's hopes up. Didn't want to get his own hopes up. So I think when he said 10 games, it's really because they don't know. I think when they tell you and George Hill said it yesterday, when they are taking this a day at a time, I think that's legitimate. I think they are legitimately taking this a day at a time. He hasn't played basketball for 3 months. He got a cast off, I think he said a week and a half ago. It's a weird, funky injury. It's a mallet fracture, and it happened on his thumb, which typically a mallet injury happens on one of your fingers, not your thumb. So it's like, I think it's the combination of all these things. It's a weird, funky injury. He's 34 years old, so he hasn't played basketball in 3 months. So you want to make sure the rest of his body is right, that he's in shape, so that you're not just throwing him into a game where he can maybe suffer some other kind of injury and then be out even longer. So I just think it's all those things. And he said over the last 4 or 5 days, he's made a lot of progress. He's been shooting. There was video, before the Boston game, he was out there warming up. So physically, he's probably, he's ramping up. So I think it's all trending positively. He said yesterday that he believes it will be sooner than what people think. And so, yeah, Mike, I would imagine it's going to be at least those 10 games. And I could imagine it being more, because I think they really are just taking it one day at a time with him. And it's just a matter now, I think, of pain tolerance in the hand, if he's feeling anything with those nerves from the procedure. And then 2, just being in basketball shape, because you don't want to see him at 34 years old go out and then suffer a hamstring strain or a calf injury, and then he's out even longer.
Because what he said, Paul, I mean, he really got deep into this, but he was like, basically saying, you don't want to go out there. You want to make sure the whole car's up to date is right. Exactly what he said. He said, my thumb might be okay, but I don't want to go play, and then I have an Achilles problem or a hamstring pull or a groin. So it sounds like he might be past the thumb. Now he's just kind of ramping the other parts to catch up so that he goes out there and he doesn't break. Remember, people forget he's 34 years old. He's not some young kid that can just get right out there and start running. 34 years old. You'll find out one day, Paul, it's not fun.
Mike, you're giving me too much credit. You don't realize how old I am, but I won't tell you. But I am not 34 years old. I'm older than 34 years old, so I definitely know. That car running thing, it does take a little bit more as the older you get. So that is the reality of it. But Doc actually even mentioned that, with that type of injury, if you're playing the game of basketball, your hands are going to get smacked. That's just the reality of playing basketball, especially on an NBA level. You're going to drive to the lane. You're going to go for a layup. Someone's going to take a swipe at that hand, and it's going to hurt even without a thumb injury. So you want to make sure, too, that those nerves are fully healed so that, again, when he gets smacked on the hand, it's nothing. Yeah. It's not going to bother him. It's not going to linger. It's not going to affect his shot. And so I think it's a little bit of everything. But I would say to everyone to just it's going to come. He's going to play. He's going to play in regular season games. He's a veteran player. He doesn't need that much time to figure this thing out. He's integrated. He's learning the playbook. He's learning the team. He knows what, and I thought what he said yesterday was great too. Like the idea of whether I'm playing 15 minutes or I'm playing 30 minutes, I don't care. I just want to have a role when I want to win. And I think that is the biggest thing when I'm talking about a guy like a George Hill, who I think just he'll fit in. And I think that's another reason why I'm not so worried about if he plays only 10 games, I think he'll be fine.
All right, Paul Hudrick, by the way, tonight, it's 8 o'clock right here on 97.3 ESPN. Tomorrow, it's Oklahoma City and the Sixers. Then they're off till Monday. They'll play Dallas, who, by the way, is playing a lot better basketball. So that game, no slouch, even though Dallas isn't all that glamorous in the standings. They've been playing a lot better. And then Wednesday night, they're back home against the Brooklyn Nets. I know we're all going to be looking forward to that. He's Paul Hudrick at Paul Hudrick on Twitter. His Coming In for a Landing podcast is excellent insight on the Sixers. They go a lot deeper into some of the things that we hit on here on the Inside the Sixers. And he like all gets appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Paul, take care, pal.
You too, Mike. Thanks, man.
We will talk to Paul coming up on Monday as we'll recap the weekend here of Sixers basketball. He'll be back on Monday here on the Sports Best. Don't forget, I got Flyers tickets to give away. I'll be giving them away here in the 5 o'clock hour tonight. So for those of you out there, I got Flyers tickets. I got 3 4-packs of Flyers tickets for the game on Sunday, and we'll be giving those away during Happy Hour Friday with Pete Thompson here on the Sports Best. So don't forget, I got Flyers tickets to give away. If you want to go to see the Flyers play on Sunday against the Sabres, keep listening for your chance to win those tonight in the 5 o'clock hour. I will give away all 3 4-packs here on the Sports Bash during Happy Hour Friday with the PT. 5:25 tonight, John Clayton, the professor, joins me here on the Sports Bash. You'll hear what John Clayton has to say about the NFL draft. Now that all these trades have happened, what does he see happening in those first 4 spots in the draft? That's John Clayton tonight at 5:25. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. You're watching and listening to 97.3 ESPN. So coming up, I've got Sports Bash cash on the way. Another chance for you to win $1,000 at 3:55. All right, welcome back. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. 11 minutes from now, I've got Sports Bash cash up to $10,000. It's $1,000 every day, 10 times a day. One winner, 10 grand. And then one lucky winner wins $10,000 at the end of the month. That's simple. So I do want to bring this up. We talked about it with Sal Pal. We'll talk about it with Geoff Mosher during football at 4. And John Clayton tonight as well here on the Sports Bash. So don't shoot the messenger, okay? I'm just the messenger of the story. And as Sal Pal mentioned, Pro Football Talk, Mike Florio, reports that if there's one team that still has their eye on Deshaun Watson, it's the Eagles. Now, keep in mind, a lot is happening with this case as we speak today. There has been new information all day long regarding this case, some of which, see, as of many of you now know, Deshaun Watson's in some trouble. And it stems from a sexual assault, allegedly, that he was a part of with a bunch of different masseuses. 22 different women have come out against him. And 2 this week on Tuesday came forward. The judge in Texas today has essentially said that the accusers must show their names. Well, obviously, what happens in this situation is the woman that came out on Tuesday, she has been receiving death threats in this sad world that we live in. She has been receiving death threats. So what does that mean? These other women now may not want to reveal their names for fear of what might happen to them. That is the case that Deshaun Watson's lawyers have basically said. We have faceless people making allegations against my client. Those people need to show their faces and show who they are. You can't just have a faceless person, nameless person. The lawsuit was filed under Jane Doe. So the judge in Texas has basically said these lawsuits will be thrown out unless they reveal their name. The judge ruled that Deshaun Watson's accuser must refile the case with her name attached to it. So this really changes things, because if these women do not want to attach their name, they might throw the case out. Now, the Eagles have a moral situation here, as we discussed with Sal Paolantonio, who said, and luckily Sal Pal emailed me this a little earlier in the day so that I can kind of read it back over, that keep in mind that Lori, a very liberal owner, was deeply concerned with the rights of women, and that his dissertation in college was entitled The Depiction of Women in Hollywood Movies. So this is something that, look, Jeff Lurie, he brought in Michael Vick. But is this something that he wants to deal with? I don't know. I have no idea what Jeff Lurie would think on this. Jeff Lurie has been all about giving people a second chance. But is this just too much? Because as Mike Florio reports, the Eagles, as one league source explains it to Mike Florio, the Eagles are determined to upgrade the team and that they would pursue Watson if the window opens for doing so. Well, what's the window? Him being cleared? Is that enough of a window? Just, okay, this case is thrown out. See, to me, there's too much vagueness in this. Before they do anything here, all of these legal issues would need to be resolved. And then the question would be, would Jeff Lurie, the owner, still feel comfortable bringing Deshaun Watson here after all of these allegations that surrounded him for the last 2 months. And then this doesn't even get you to what you need to trade to get Deshaun Watson. Does him being a part of this whole situation lend you to get him for a cheaper price? I don't know. So if 4 weeks ago it would have been 3 first-round picks, are you saying, well, he's got a lot of baggage and there's a lot of dark clouds over his head? We're not giving you 3 first-round picks for that because there's a possibility. I don't even think that Jeff Lurie would be willing to pull the trigger if there was even one iota of a possibility that Watson has any issue. And I think it's very premature to talk about anything that has to do with the future of Deshaun Watson at this point. But here's what I do know, that the courts have forced these 20 women to attach their names to the claim. And that could change a lot. If they want to remain anonymous and just look to settle this out of court because they don't want their names out there, you might see Deshaun Watson back on the field. I know it would probably upset and should upset a lot of people. I mean, the world we live in is just a mess right now. But they have the right to say, I don't want to be a part of this, and I want this to go away. So the best case scenario for all involved is, I'm talking about the Eagles side of things. And as Mike Florio writes, the question here is what plays out next. And as Mike Florio writes, whenever that happens, the Eagles could emerge as a real possibility. So I wonder how many people out there listening, watching, would have any interest in Deshaun Watson. When this 2 months ago, when Deshaun Watson just said, I don't want to play here anymore. I don't want to be a member of the Houston Texans. And there's a lot of people that feel like he'll never play for the Texans regardless again. And if he's on the exempt list, he still gets paid and doesn't have to play for them. So keep that in mind, because the scenario coming here is that he would be put on the exempt list, most likely, the commissioner's exempt list. In other words, we don't know what to do with this guy. The league's saying, I don't know how to handle this. I don't know what to do with him. So we'll just put him on the exempt list and we'll you pay him and we'll figure it out. That being said, if you're an Eagles fan, do you even want to go down that road? We posted this story up on social media, and it's been getting a lot of negative reaction. No, they're not. Forget about it. Why would anyone want to trade for Watson right now with the legal trouble that he's in? Now, I think that's probably someone who didn't read the article, because the legal problems that he's in might be going away. Now, they might not. We'll ask Jeff Mosher if there's any credence to the possibility that the Eagles could be involved here for Deshaun Watson. All that and more. Sports Bash, football at 4. It's on the way on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. Now, remember, when they signed Michael Vick, there was no legal ramifications. He had served his time already. He was already past all the legal problems. So for people who say, well, they signed Michael Vick did his time. He went to jail. Deshaun Watson, we have no idea. All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Sports Bash Cash code word is coming up right now. So listen for that for a chance to win $1,000 from Jersey Shore Federal Credit Union. And coming up next, it's football at 4 with Jeff Mosher. 1 hour from now, I've got Flyers tickets here on the Sports Bash. All right, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast and brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets and take your profit. Perfect time to use PropSwap during the Masters tournament, which is underway. I think Justin Rose is still 7 under par, 2 shots up on Jordan Spieth. Right now, it's time for Football at 4. Now, Adam Kaplan was here Monday, so Jeff Mosher is hitting for him today, and he, like all guests, appears via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Moshe doing it via telephone today. What's going on, Moshe?
How are you doing, Michael? What's going on?
Everything is good. It's I see this avatar of you just smiling at me. It's a little different than seeing your face.
Well, at least I'm smiling.
Yeah, Josh picked a picture of you actually smiling here. All right, for those of you out there, Football at 4, I want to get your take on some things on the field before we look at some draft stuff, and that's the signings from earlier in the week, which brings in Eric Wilson, number 1, to the linebacker position. You and I both know linebacker is a spot that you and I talk about a lot. We don't see how they're going to upgrade it, but they brought in a significant upgrade on Wednesday.
Well, yes, it's a significant upgrade when you consider the fact that if they didn't have Eric Wilson, who would they be playing next to Alex Singleton in not only their nickel formations, but in their base formations as well? And, we have guys like TJ Edwards, who's kind of a one-dimensional linebacker, downhill style. And then there's Davion Taylor, who's never even really gotten his feet wet as a rookie last year and has a lot of work to do. So, yes, it's an upgrade because it's a guy who, again, played in that Minnesota defense. So much like Anthony Harris, he brings not only a certain skill set, but also because he's starting linebacker in the NFL. So the bar is pretty as far as an upgrade, but it is a good signing for them.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, obviously, when you're dealing with the Eagles linebacking core, which has been a real weakness, but, Eric Wilson's a guy who played 96% of the snaps. I mean, he's a guy who was productive. Tackles 122, 3 sacks, 3 interceptions. It's highly more productive than any other guy that Philadelphia, but you just brought it up. So is he productive because he's a good player? Is he productive because he was a good player on a bad team? Or is he productive because he got the opportunity and we don't know enough about him? Because he really only got a chance to play because Anthony Barr got hurt.
Right, exactly. And it's kind of like an Anthony Harris signing, right? Anthony Harris was basically a special teamer and a backup while the Vikings relied heavily on Harrison Smith and Andrew Sandejo for quite a while when they were a pretty good defense. And then guys got hurt, guys moved on. Anthony Harris got some opportunities the last 2 years. 2 years ago, he happened to be at the right place at the right time a lot, had a lot of interceptions. Last year on the tackles because they weren't a great defense. And he was safety. You never want to have your safety, among the top tacklers on your team unless he's a box safety, which Anthony Harris wasn't. So same thing with Eric Wilson. I mean, obviously Anthony Barr and Eric Kendricks are the 2 really talented linebackers on the Vikings. And this guy had an opportunity to play because of injuries. He did make the most. He does know the scheme. He's not the greatest tackler in the world, but I sense that his role will be mostly in the nickel and dime packages here when they're in 3. And it's really even hard to talk about what they're going to look like in 3 linebacker formations or 2 or 1 right now because the draft is a couple of weeks away. And I still think that that's an area that the Eagles are going to try to hit hard, from round 2 to round 7 at some point. Yeah. And so anybody that they draft will be given a pretty good opportunity to also get the time in there.
Now, Geoff, Sal Pal was on with us earlier, and we talked. He really mentioned that they're going to be a big cover 2 team, rely on the corners. You've said on Inside the Birds, you guys think corner. If you're playing cover 2, predominantly, those corners are pretty important in this defense. And if you're not going in with better corners than what you have now, so obviously we've talked a lot about that cornerback position, but I guess so many different things could happen but at number 12 right now, would you say that is the most likely position, forget best player available and yada, yada, that the corner is the one that they are most zoned in on?
I think if those 2 guys that we talk about a lot, J.C. Horn and Patrick Surtain are there, yes, I do.
Now let me stop you real quick let me stop you real quick and ask you this: do you think Jonathan Gannon and Nick Sirianni will have some say in that, hey, I'm playing cover 2. I need to rely on my corners. I need you to get me some corners early in this draft. Do you think they will have that ability?
I think what they have, Mike, is not necessarily say in the pick, but a say in obviously the scheme that they're going to run and how important certain positions are to what they want to do. And if you're Howie Roseman, you want to listen in because your chances of succeeding on your pick and hitting on your pick and being a good GM is picking the right player to fit the scheme, right? Like the first 2 years of Chip Kelly's tenure, Chip Kelly did not have a say in the draft. Howie Roseman was making the picks, but certainly when you pick a guy like Marcus Smith, a pass-rushing outside linebacker for a 3-4 scheme, which you would normally not pick, you're doing it because your coaches and your head coach and the scheme you run dictate that. So I do think everything just kind of folds in. They really need corners. They are going to play a lot more cover 2. They're going to play cover 3 as well. And it just so happens that where they're picking, there should be some really good cornerbacks available that will also happen to probably be the best players on the board. And so I think it's all going to fold into that. I can't imagine that Howie is going to make a pick without the input or the collaboration of everybody on the team, including the coaches. I don't know, though, that they get more weight or priority than anybody else. But again, you're a good GM. You want to pick the right players for the scheme you're going to run.
Yeah. Well, how much say did Jim Schwartz get with his scheme? I mean, did he say, hey, get me some linebackers, and then he got nothing?
Well, Jim got a linebacker on day 3 last year that just happened to be a guy who wasn't ready to play, which they should have known, but he differently. But Jim, I mean, think about when Jim first took the job, right? And you see parallels already. When Jim took the job, they got a couple of players from Buffalo that were familiar with his scheme. They got Leotis McKelvin to play corner, and they got Nigel Bradham to play linebacker, and then they would have lined up the next year trading for Ronald Darby, who would have also come over from Buffalo. And you're kind of seeing that now. I mean, you're getting Anthony Harris from Minnesota and Eric Wilson from Minnesota. So clearly Howie's making a concerted effort, not just to get like upgrades, but guys who are going to help Jonathan Gannon implement this scheme and let everybody understand what's going on the field.
Geoff Mosher, Football 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, 20 days away from the NFL draft. We had a lot of good draft questions from our listeners yesterday for Andrew. That was fun. So if you guys have questions that you want to pass Jeff's way, we'll try to fit some in between now and the end of the segment. We'll get to that spot. They did bring in Jordan Howard, by the way, as well. And I know that they had him last year, but they kind of brought him in late in the season. Do you think this kind of negates adding a running back with one of those 11 picks? Because they only have Boston Scott and Miles Sanders, really, I think, on the roster.
Absolutely not. It shouldn't. Again, I'm not part of the front office, but it shouldn't. It's a 1-year deal. It's very little money. It's the right type of move to make because you'd never want to be forced to draft at a certain position in any round of the draft. You want to be able to take the best player. So if you happen to make your picks and you don't get a running back, then you say, okay, we still have Jordan Howard to go along with Miles Sanders and Boston Scott. However, if there's a really good running back there, someday where, round 3, round 4, round 5, who fits what you do or is that thumper that you're looking for, you can still draft that guy. And if he has a really nice camp, nobody says that Jordan Howard has to make the 53-man. I don't know. I haven't seen the structure of the deal. I doubt there's a lot of guaranteed money in it. Signing this late and being on his, third team now, or fourth team in 4 years. So it gives you that flexibility to have somebody right now, which is what free agency is all about, filling your holes, but then not reaching at any position in the draft. But if you do draft that guy
right,
and he's better, you can play that guy. You don't have to worry about feelings here or money or financial investment.
If there's a corner at 12, Horn or Patrick Surtain, or there's a wide receiver, Waddle, Smith, where do you go?
I go corner. I go Patrick Surtain. Look, I think Jalen Waddle is going to be a very interesting player. I've heard from, on Inside the Birds we've talked about with Greg Cosell, the Tyreek Hill comparison. Definitely a player you want to put on the move a lot. I mean, he's certainly got a lot of explosion, but it's just, and ordinarily I would say, hey, whoever you have ranked higher, that's how I go BPA. If you have Waddle as ranked way higher numerically on your board, then than Surtain or Horn, then you probably should do that. But I have a feeling that this team is going to judge them all as they're all pretty darn good. And it's been too long, like 21 years now since they took a cornerback in the first round in a league that's all about stopping the pass. Like at some point, you have to invest some draft capital in cornerback and hit.
All right, let's. We got some questions on the stream coming in for Geoff. So if you have a question that you want Geoff to target, send it in on the stream or the text board, 609-403-0973. Here's one for you. It says, Geoff, love Inside the Birds. That's number one. I've noticed the last couple days with Andrew and now today, we've had a lot of cross listeners from Inside the Birds and the Football at 4 segment, so that's good. Today, Daniel Jeremiah said the Panthers may take offensive line at 8. Do you think that it's likely, and would that increase the chances the Eagles get a corner at 12?
Yeah, certainly. That's something we've talked about. The Panthers are kind of a wild card team now that they got their quarterback because they really need offensive line help, but they also need cornerback help. So you hope, if you're the Eagles and you want either a corner, then that you would hope the Panthers took the offensive lineman, and that it pushes those two cornerbacks down a little bit, but you just never know.
All right, let's get another question for Geoff here. If the Eagles get a corner at 12 and Farley falls back to the back end of the first round, would it be good for the Eagles to move up and take him there or stay at 37 and get a guy like Asante Samuel? This is an interesting question to me, Geoff, because Farley, as we know, Adam has been on the show saying he might fall out of the first round. You know, the Eagles famously took a injured corner in the second round a couple of years ago, and that didn't work out so well for him. Totally different injury, but Farley has 2 back procedures. That kind of worries me a little bit, but would you take him if he's falling deep in the first round, or wait till 37 and see if he goes there, or just pass on him altogether?
I think I wouldn't pass on him altogether. I also wouldn't be scared, per se, by what they went through with Sidney Jones. You have to trust your talent evaluation. I'm not sure I would give up draft capital, move back in the first round for him, unless I knew the full extent of his medicals and how the team felt about him. But I certainly would consider him at 37 overall and not fear the Sidney Jones syndrome all over again. I don't think you can do that. You know, great players, sometimes you miss on them. The Eagles more than lately have done that. But if you really love a guy and you thought he was top 15 or top 10 and he's there at 37 and you're confident he can recover from the surgeries and be an effective player, then you take him.
You don't have any problem with going round 1 corner, round 2 corner, do you?
I'm laughing because we talked about that last time I was on, and somebody listened to it and thought that I don't know how they thought this, Mike, because we were talking about guys like Surtain and Horn, and I said I have no issue with the Eagles going corner first round, corner second round. I must have said cornerback first round, cornerback second round, and some guys called me a lunatic because I wanted a quarterback in the first round and a quarterback in the second round. So he clearly didn't hear the context of the conversation you and I were having. But yes, to repeat, I am very comfortable with the Eagles going corner back first round and cornerback second round, as long as those are the guys that they feel are the highest at the position in both rounds.
Yes. Well, as Brian in Ocean City wants to know, what is Geoff's cell service? Your phone is a little bad. You know, it's a little. Normally, too, you're on video, so you sound a lot better on video than you do phone.
Apologies. I am on the New Jersey Turnpike coming back from a little family trip upstate New York.
All right. So then with that, I want to transition to a report. I guess you could call it a report, something from Mike Florio over at Pro Football Talk. So since you've been away, this came out today. Now, a lot has happened in this Deshaun Watson case today. There's a lot of new news in this Deshaun Watson case today. But that being said, according to Florio, there's one team to watch closely as a destination for Deshaun Watson, the Eagles. As one league source explains it, the Eagles are sufficiently determined to upgrade the team, and they would pursue Watson if the window opens for doing so. So would you think that Jeffrey Lurie, knowing his background, would he have any interest in greenlighting a trade for Deshaun Watson?
I will just repeat what we've said on Inside the Birds a couple of times. Going back 2 or 3 weeks ago, Are the Eagles interested? Of course they're interested. They have uncertainty at the quarterback position right now. They're always looking for top-level quarterback. But a move like this, with what's going on right now with that guy, would not be approved or made by Jeffrey Lurie unless first his team of security people, and that might not just be Eagles employees, it might be police, it might be outside, outsourced help investigators, are completely and 100% satisfied that everything that's being said about Deshaun Watson right now is not true. And Jeffrey Lurie would have to be 100% confident that Deshaun Watson's character isn't what it's being alleged to be right now before any kind of move or any kind of thumbs up is going to be made. And Mike, that takes time. I mean, it's not just one. It's not sending Big Dom over down to Houston to talk to a few people. It's an expensive type of work that has to be done.
Geoff, just to give you some update on today, the news today is that the court in Texas ruled that the women have to attach their name to the lawsuit. They cannot be Jane Doe. So they now need to step forward. And the woman that came out on Tuesday, she said she's been getting death threats, which means what? Some of these women are probably going to say, well, she's getting death threats. I don't want to deal with that. And that's Watson's course of action at this point. So that's what's happened today, is that some people feel that if the women don't come out with their name, they might throw the cases out.
Yeah, well, as we've seen in the past, Mike, even when, like the Ezekiel Elliott situation, where he was never found guilty in any court, never accused, I believe, of doing anything wrong, and handed him a 6-game suspension. So when you're the Eagles or any team that's looking into this and trading a potential trade for Deshaun Watson, you can't just rely on what the courts are going to say. You have to also rely on what's going to happen with the NFL investigation, and then, of course, what your own feedback is. So interest, yes. I mean, at this point, though, I don't see anything happening anytime soon with all this stuff still hovering around.
All right, some more questions coming in. This one's from Frank. He says, what does Geoff think about Dallas coveting Kyle Pitts? How hard would Dallas be to stop with Pitts? Now, can they stop anybody is the question. But what about this Mortensen report that it says they're basically infatuated with Kyle Pitts?
Hey, I mean, there's only one football, right? They got a lot of weapons. They've got Cooper. They've got Zeke, we just talked about. They got CeeDee Lamb. You add Pitts to that offense, sure, it's great. But does that help improve their defense, which hasn't been that good? No. So, I mean, I look at it and I say, all right, any team here is going to draft. When you're not drafting a quarterback, right, any team that's drafting one player can't just rely on that one player to, take them where they're looking to go. Quarterback's different, obviously. We've seen that. We all think that the Bengals probably have a better future with Joe Burrow than they've had in the last 5 or 6 years because that's the impact a quarterback has. But if Dallas takes Kyle Pitts, yeah, they're really tough to defend, but they're already tough to defend. So what do they go from, with Dak healthy, do they go from 26 points a game to 31? You're still going to have to score a lot of points to beat them nonetheless.
Absolutely. And, look, I thought last year they took Lamb. I thought they should have taken a defensive player. Lamb's a great talent. He still had about 900 yards. I mean, it wasn't like he blew the top off the place. Now, he had 5 different quarterbacks playing with them. He might be a superstar, but their defense was so bad last year. Can they get better? They fired Mike Nolan. We'll see. They brought Dan Quinn in there. It's going to be interesting. I think one of the more interesting storylines in round 1 anyway, Geoff, is the whole chess match between Dallas at 10, New York at 11, and Philadelphia at 12. You have 3 division rivals back to back to back. And I think that's going to be an obstacle for Philadelphia, at least if you mentioned, hey, they might want to trade back up. Well, they're not trading up with Dallas and New York. I think we know that.
Yeah, I also wonder if some of these reports of who Dallas is infatuated is, as you know, this time of the year, it's silly season. You're trying to throw teams off. Maybe it's intended to stop the Eagles from trading up above them with 9 with Denver because they think, oh, it's okay. Dallas is going to take Pitts or whatever offensive weapon is there. We can sit here and get to 10,
Yeah.
All the reports of guys infatuated with X, Y, and Z, teams infatuated with X, Y, and Z, you have to take those with a grain of salt at this time.
Well, let me ask you this: the Deshaun Watson story, is that the Eagles slipping that out there to see what the reaction is, like what the fans' reaction is, like, yo, get this guy or steer clear of this guy? Do they kind of want to test
crowdsourcing?
What's that?
Crowdsourcing, huh?
Right. I mean, if you're the Eagles, you say, look, Mike Florio, hey, we would be interested in Watson if it was available. He puts it out there, and they check the reaction. Because let me tell you, the reaction's not good.
That is true. I can imagine that it's not. But that's the thing. The reaction on a thing like this can change overnight, depending on what happens legally or just,
Oh, I know.
with
I'm
people getting in and then getting out. So I don't know. People thought Baltimore was doing that a couple of years ago with a certain player, and I forget who comes to mind, where they said they were going to sign him, and then they were kind of trying to gauge crowd reaction. It's been done before, but I don't know that it benefits the Eagles really to do this.
All right.
At this point.
Well, obviously, it's a pretty controversial signing or trade if they were to make it. We'll see what happens with Watson, but that new news today certainly changes some things potentially for him. They could put him on the exempt list as well, which means he would be paid to not play. So a lot more can happen. Football at 4, of course, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. The guys have a fresh podcast coming up for you on Monday morning at 6 a.m., and we are 20 days from the NFL draft. We have plenty of draft coverage. Geoff Mosher is back on Monday, and we'll have more Eagles, NFL, and draft news for you here on Football at 4. Geoff, enjoy the weekend, man.
Appreciate it. You too.
All right. Geoff Mosher, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. And, of course, coming up, we will talk some more NFL draft. John Clayton, the professor, will join me here on the Sports Bash, and we'll talk a little bit more about the NFL draft and the possibilities, including, when you look at this draft, now that we have 20 days left to go till the draft, all right? The biggest NFL draft questions with 3 weeks to go. John Clayton will answer those questions tonight at 5:25. Coming up at 4:40 today, big Phillies weekend in Atlanta. We'll preview the weekend series between the Phillies and the Braves. Bob Wankel, Crossing Broad's Phillies writer, will join me as he does each and every Monday and Friday right here on the Sports Bash. All right, I got another chance for you to win Sports Bash cash in 22 minutes, so stick around for that. Another chance for you to score $1,000. I suggest getting the free mobile app on your phone so you can enter the word right there on your phone. You can also watch the show live through Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Just search 973 ESPN on those 3 platforms, and you can watch the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app, and, of course, the live video stream. I'm Mike Gill. Follow me at Mike Gill Show. All right, coming up, the Masters, by the way, Pete Thompson tonight at 5:25. We're going to have Pete Thompson tell us his Masters stories. And I have some trades that I'm going to throw Pete Thompson's way. Stick around for this, all right? When we come back, we've got plenty more on this draft situation. The Sixers play Zion tonight. We're going to update the Zion poll question, all that and more. All right, welcome back. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill. And, of course, you can watch the show live at 97.3 ESPN. Big Phillies weekend ahead in Atlanta. We're going to preview with Bob Wankel coming up in about 7 minutes from now. Plus, who says no to these trades? Happy Hour Friday with Pete Thompson, 5 o'clock. And then the biggest NFL draft questions with 3 weeks to go before the draft. John Clayton, NFL Insider, will join me at 5:25 tonight here on the Sports Bash. I think this is now this draft, as Sal Pal said earlier, they've got to hit a home run in this draft. They really do. I disagree with Sal. He says he would have stayed at 6 because they can get an impact player. I understand what everybody's saying with that. You're going to get a better player presumably at 6 than you are at 12. I don't disagree with that. My point is the Eagles are much further away than just getting one player. And I do kind of disagree with him on the makeup of the Kansas City Chiefs. He brought the Chiefs up and talked about their roster. Well, I think we talked about it last year. Yeah, they have very good players. I'm not saying they don't. I'm just saying where they got those players. They didn't get them at number 6. I can tell you that much. You know, the core players of that team were not first-round draft picks. The core players of the Kansas City Chiefs, you know, you got your quarterback at number 10. You got Tyreek Hill, a guy that slipped in the draft a little bit. He got him in the 5th round. So they didn't get Tyreek Hill with the 6th pick in the draft. What they did was they got a lot of impact players all over the field. You know, who's another guy on that team? Travis Kelce. Well, in this draft, Kyle Pitts is going to go in the first couple of picks. Travis Kelce went in the 3rd round. He was picked 63. So everybody complains about, oh, you didn't take this guy. Nobody picked Travis Kelce, and he's the best he's the best tight end in the league. But if you take a look at who are some of their key players, a lot of them weren't high first-round picks. But what they did was they got a lot of picks, and they hit on a lot of these guys. You know, when you look at that defense, the Kansas City Chiefs defense, who's really the signature player of that defense? You know, who's the guy on that defense that you're like, that's their guy on that side of the ball? And you take a look around and it's like, well, they didn't get that guy. They didn't get those guys in the 1st round. They didn't get a lot of first-round players. I think the one thing with them is they got the quarterback at number 10. That really was a difference maker. That was a big difference maker, of course, to get that quarterback and not have to take him in the top part of the draft. You get a guy like Chris Jones, you know, who's there, you know, he's an impactful defensive player for them. He was a 2nd-round pick. He's one of the better defensive, I guess, tackles in football. You know, Frank Clark was a guy who was picked in the 2nd round. He was in Seattle. Frank Clark played at Michigan. Now he fell to the 2nd round because he had some problems. They got Tyrann Mathieu from Arizona, was a 3rd round pick. Turns out to be, you know, he fell because he had some problems. But they don't have that 1st round guy on that team other than Patrick Mahomes at number 10. Travis Kelce, 3rd round pick. Tyreek Hill, 5th round pick. It's not a team that really build their team through high draft picks. They build it through having multiple draft choices and hitting on them. That's the big difference. Mecole Hardman is a nice player for them. He was drafted in the 2nd round. He wasn't drafted in the 1st round. There's plenty of ways to skin the cat, but I'm saying that's where I disagree with Sal Pal a little bit. He brought up the Kansas City Chiefs about all these 1st-round picks. I think we looked at it last year. How many 1st-round picks on the whole roster did they have? I don't think they had more than 10. The Chiefs don't have a lot of 1st-round picks. Now, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, if you want to go look at them, that's a different story. The Bucs are built with a lot of 1st-round talent. Tristan Wirfs they got last year. So there's multiple ways to do it. That's why I say I disagree a little bit where he said that, where are my notes at from that conversation? Can't read any of my handwriting anyway. I don't know why I always write these notes down. You ever look at my handwriting, Josh, and ever wonder, what were you actually trying to write down? Wait, what? Once a week? I mean, do you see my notes for the Sal Pao interview today? I want to show the people watching on the stream. I don't know if you can see this. These are my notes. Can you read any of this? I can't read. This part down here is my notes from the Sal Pao interview, right? Right here. These are my notes from the Sal Pao conversation. They kind of spin all the way around this block here. I can't read anything here. What the hell? He said, I'm not in agreement from moving back from 6 to 12. I don't agree with that. I mean, it's just a different philosophy. I like, though. I mean, my point, I don't like moving from 6 to 12 for the player, but I like moving from 6 to 12 because I got the picks next year. My team is in such bad shape. I have so many problems. We said, if there's a wide receiver at 12 or a corner at 12, what would you do? And you can't answer the question. Why? Because they have so many holes, you need them both. So I need players next year. That's right. I need players next year. Sports Bash Live 97.3. Well, I said that. I said that the players that the Chiefs got, a lot of them fell because they had character problems. Tyreek Hill, Tyrann Mathieu, Frank Clark. These are guys that they were not first-round picks. They fell because they had character problems. Tyreek Hill went in the 5th round. You know, he fell all the way to the 5th round. I don't know that he would have been a first-round pick. Tyrann Mathieu, maybe. Frank Clark, probably. But they didn't have a guy, as we were talking about. Tyreek Hill wasn't getting picked in the top 12. That's what I said. Again, you like to bring up your own things because you guys don't listen. But as I mentioned, they got a lot of these guys later in the draft, not in the first round. All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. This hour brought to you by Prop Swap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets and take your profit. Right now, Jordan Spieth is 2-back the lead. Now, if you had that Jordan Spieth 60-1 ticket, I'd sell that right now at Prop Swap. I bet you people, by the way, we gave you 2 names. Tony Finau, he's 4 under in 4th place. 30-1. Prop Swap that ticket. Do it. Get involved. Prop Swap, baby. Jordan Spieth, 5 under. He was 60-1 2 weeks ago. I hope you bought that ticket and prop swapped it. All right, big weekend for the Phils. They swept the Braves last time. Now they're in Atlanta. We'll preview it. Coming up next, right here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. All right, welcome back. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Nothing better than a weekend set with the Phillies and the Bravos going at it down there in Cobb County, Georgia, where the Braves host the Phillies for a 3-gamer. Bob Wankel's back on a Friday as we preview the weekend between the Phillies and the Braves. Now, Bob, we know the Phillies swept this series the first time they played. This will be the first time they go on the road, but this Braves team has struggled. They played a mash unit of Nationals and struggled against that team. So I don't know. I don't think we think this Brave team's a dumpster fire or a mess, but are you a little surprised that they've got out in the gate so slow?
Yeah, I mean, I was certainly surprised by the result over the weekend at Citizens Bank Park. I mean, Braves rebound, they do get 2 out of 3 against the Nationals, this week. And you saw guys like Ronald Acuna kind of come to life a little bit. Ozzie Albies is off to a really tough start through 6 games, but the top 3 hitters in the Braves lineup last weekend, I believe, were combined 2 for 44. Don't expect that this time around. This is a fired up Atlanta team. I think that they have a lot of pride. They've won a lot of games the last 3 years, and I am sure that they did not like how their season started when they were in Philadelphia last weekend.
Obviously, Philadelphia. Look, the one thing with Philly, we've talked about it a few times here, but I don't think we can hammer it home enough. You tweeted out the bullpen numbers, taking out the Velazquez inning and a third, if you will, totally has reshaped the way you think about this team, right? I mean, I think any fan is looking at this team differently, certainly, strictly on that bullpen.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. The bullpen has been markedly better. They had an 11-plus ERA through the first 6 games of the 2020 season. You turn around and they're in the mid-3s here after 6 games this season. You take out the Velazquez implosion in the 7th inning on Tuesday night, and it's a sub-2 ERA. So, the strikeouts are up. They're really limiting hard contact from opposing hitters, especially late in the game with their main guys like Alvarado and Neris and Brogdon. So that's really the big thing that we've seen here so far to this point. And to be honest with you, I don't know how well this bullpen is going to continue to perform, but I believe in this bullpen. I do believe that, you might not see an elite level performance consistently here. I think we've talked about it in the past. I don't know that this is a top 5 bullpen, but I do believe a top 5 bullpen in the National League, I should say. But I do believe when you look at the back end and the upside that they have in the late innings, that this is going to be a consistently quality bullpen.
Yeah. Now you mentioned the numbers that you tweeted out from last year to this year. I mean, I thought the numbers that they gave up last year, the walks and the hits, their whip must have been about 9 last year. The first 6 games, it was bonkers. That to me is another huge thing is the walks are down. I mean, I don't know what the team whip is, but that's a huge thing to be able to throw. So you take that Velasquez inning out, he had 4 walks in a third of an inning. They have been making quality pitches. They're not walking guys. Alvarado got into trouble the one game, but other than that, these guys pound the strike zone.
Yeah, you know what, though? I will say this, and again, we're talking about a revamped bullpen. It's a completely different unit, but you go back and look at the 2020 Phillies, right? They were 19-13 at home last year. You know what they were on the road? They were 9-19 on the road. And again, abbreviated season, small samples, all that stuff, but we're talking about a team that was a nightmare away from Citizens Bank Park last year. And so, again, I know it's early in the season. You would expect the Braves to bounce back in this series after being swept, but it's a huge series for the Phillies. These games all count. They're all important early on. We're talking about a division where the Phillies are, coming into this thing, arguably the 3rd or 4th best team. These games matter. And you consider the way that they played on the road a season ago, this series matters. And so I'm really curious to see what they do this weekend.
Bob, you bring up a great point in that they play their first 7 games against NL East teams. If they can really stretch something out here early, you're playing from ahead instead of from bunched together or from behind right off the bat. And we saw, look, I don't want to say like this is the 93 Phillies, but they got off to that start that no one thought. And, they blasted out of the gates and they never looked behind. And I contend a guy like Archie Bradley, man, to me, we talked about it on Monday, but having these new guys, and it feels like this team has more personality all of a sudden. And that was a difference maker for one of the few good teams this town has seen in the last 30 years.
Yeah, he definitely adds that element. And I mean, you look at the 93 Phillies. I mean, you brought them up. I believe they were 17-5 in April that year. And they sort of rode
that. You know that off the top of your head, or you got a computer in front of you?
We host that podcast actually. And this came up the other day and we were having a conversation about it. So we were able to, I was able to pluck that right off the top of my head. But that was a team that actually faltered a little bit when you got into like August or the beginning of September. They started to struggle, and they were able to build themselves that cushion early on. And when you look at this division, right, like if you go back 3 weeks ago, we're talking about, well, I think the Braves might be a 92 or 93 win team. What are the Phillies? 85 or 86. So you're slotting the Phillies like 6 or 7 games behind the Braves in these projections. Well, guess what? If you go down to Atlanta this weekend and you take another 2 out of 3, and then you build yourself all of a sudden a handful of games, of a lead, well, that might change the dynamics, because the rest of the way, the Braves have to be those 6 or 7 games better than you in order to leapfrog you. And I mean, it's so critical for the Phillies at the very least not to dig themselves that early season hole. And hopefully here, the decent performance this weekend, they'll have kind of built themselves that cushion.
Hey, they're 3 games up on Atlanta early. So if you can get 2 out of 3 here, it gets you another game early on that makes you say, if we're good enough, you're going to have to figure out a way to make up 4 games on us here. Rhys Hoskins, 3 for 5, a home run, 2 doubles. He's one of 4 guys to have, extra base hits. Kruk was one of those guys. Hoskins just plays first base. I don't love him in the 2-hole, but so far he's telling me to shut my pie hole. He's doing a good job there. 10 for 24, 417, 4 RBIs, 6 runs scored. One of the things is I like that production driving those guys in rather than him standing on second base. But, hey, I'll let it go until then. Is Hoskins, have they figured something out with him?
Well, you know what the interesting thing is about Rhys Hoskins, right? You said the reason you like him the 2 holes is because he works walks and he gets on base. Well, he's getting on base, but he's doing it because he's putting the ball in play. He's been a little bit more aggressive in terms of going up there and trying to make contact and do damage. 7 extra base hits in 6 games. And the amazing thing is, like last year when he wasn't going well, you still said, hey, he's walking. And fans hated it because he's supposed to be one of the heavy hitters in the middle of that lineup. He hasn't had a single walk yet this season, which is remarkable when you look at his past performance. He's still
Bob, this is the Hoskins that I like in the 4-5 spot because he's driving the ball as opposed to working the walk.
Yeah, I mean, if he's going to be able to hit at this clip, if he's going to hit over 300, 400, and give you basically an extra base hit every game, I don't think that Rhys Hoskins is going to be hanging around in the 2-hole much longer. But, I mean, we'll see how it goes. In theory, the idea is he's like a 260 hitter, has some pop, but he's going to have that on-base percentage in the high threes because of the ability to work walks. I mean, we'll see what happens here. But, again, it's so early. It's such a small sample of games. I just don't think we can go crazy. But when you consider how much of a momentum player that Rhys Hoskins is, if you said there was one guy on this team that had to get off to a good start, to me, it's Rhys Hoskins. Because you've seen over the last 3 years, when he's going well, he's unstoppable. And when it's not going well, he's a nightmare.
Which means it worries me for what could be coming.
Yeah, maybe. Well, I mean, it's certainly an encouraging start for him.
It is. And that's encouraging too, Bob, because the rest of the team has been ice cold. It's him, it's DD hitting over 300 and one other guy, JT Realmuto. The rest of the team is really struggling, and yet here they are. And we don't anticipate that happen. But Alec Boehm is a guy that I want to get your thoughts on because the average isn't great. The numbers aren't great, but I feel like the home run that he hit the other day, that was maybe the most beautiful swing that you could put on a ball. He drove it out. So it shows you that he has the power, but he does everything. And he's a guy that I think Hoskins and Boehm are really the keys wrapped around Harper.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny. We talk about Alec Boehm, and, one of the things that I've said, other people have said, I don't know that he's a 30-plus homer guy, but then you watch that swing the other day, it came on Wednesday, and you say, well, he certainly has the pop and he certainly has the strength. So what's stopping him from being a 25 or 30 homer guy? And I think it just kind of comes back to the swing path and his approach at the plate and not always looking to elevate and drive the baseball, over the fence. Talking about taking what's given to him, tries to cut down on strikeouts with 2 strikes, especially he shortens up. And I think that that's maybe what prevents those numbers from coming to fruition at this point in his career. But when you just talk about raw power and the ability, I think that Alec Boehm can be a 30 home run guy for this team eventually. Again, we've talked about him numerous times. I'm just so super impressed with the approach at the plate. Talk about him being a little bit of a throwback, just willing to take what's there. And that's not something that a lot of hitters are willing to do. And I'm not really worried about those numbers whatsoever right now. I know the OPS is below 700. Give it time. It'll come up. I don't think you have anything to worry about with him.
And he's clutch. He hits in big moments. He's my favorite player in baseball, I think, right now.
Really? I don't,
I love him.
Listen, I love the guy, and I actually think that he's probably destined to be this team's cleanup hitter eventually. I think it's actually going to trend in that direction by the time we get to midseason.
Bob, give me your evaluation of what you're seeing from Nola. I mean, he gets a 4-0 lead, and there's a lot of people. Kevin Cooney was on with us yesterday, and he said he's not their number 1, he's their number 3.
Wow. I didn't know that Kevin was such a takesman. That is a strong take.
I had flames coming out of the screen.
Oh, man. Yeah, Kevin.
He go Wheeler, Eflin, Nola.
Listen, I love Kevin, and I respect his opinion immensely. I still think that game in, game out, when it's all said and done, Aaron Nola is going to have the best stat line on this team. I know Zach Wheeler actually probably outpitched Aaron Nola last year, but for me, I need to see Zach Wheeler do it a little bit more consistently. As good as he was in the first game, 7 innings, 1 hit, 10 strikeouts. We'll see him again tonight. We'll see what happens. I still just think that Aaron Nola has the best feel for pitching, that has the plus curveball. When he's on with the fastball and can locate it, I just think that he's the more dominant pitcher. But yeah, no, I get the argument for it. I mean, they could be flipping 1A, 1B for the majority of the season. Who knows?
Real quick, we got about a minute and a half here. We talked about the bullpen at the top, but overall, do you see it's Neris, Alvarado? Who's that other guy? Who's the guy he trusts? I know it's very early, but if you're in like that 7th inning, you need that. Is it Brogdon? Is it Bradley? Who's that third kind of, or is there somebody I'm missing?
Yeah, I mean, at this point in the season, I think it's Neris, Alvarado, Bradley, because of the stature and the money and the reputation and the experience, but I would not be stunned. And we've talked about him as well. I've told you on this show that I'm a huge Connor Brogdon guy. I really believe in him. I said that I could see a scenario if Hector Neris were to falter, that Connor Brogdon could be this team's closer come July. So for me, I think that Bradley and Connor Brogdon are kind of right neck and neck in terms of having Joe Girardi's trust. You probably defer to Bradley at this point just because of the experience.
It's Wheeler, Morton tonight. I would have liked them to try to take a flyer on Morton, by the way.
That would have been nice. Yeah, I mean,
Eflin, Anderson, and more Smiley. So what do you got here this weekend?
I'm going to say that the Phillies ride the momentum here and get 2 out of 3. I don't know which games they win, but I think that they go down there and they win 2 out of 3. I see that the national audience is going to get treated to the headline matchup of Smiley and Moore on Sunday night. So that's a classic battle there.
Should be a good one. Good weekend. Wheeler, Morton, Eflin, Anderson, Moore, Smiley, Wankel, Gill. We're back on Monday. And make sure you follow him at Bob Wankel CB. Check out Crossing Broad. Listen to the podcast Crossed Up. And, of course, we'll be back on Monday with a look at the weekend. And the Phillies will be getting ready for a 4-game set with the Mets Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. All right, brother.
Many pitches.
Yeah, man. I'll talk to you then. Bob Wankel, Crossing Broad, every Friday. We're getting really good reaction to that. People have been texting me saying they love hearing Bob and I just talk baseball. We'll talk baseball throughout the baseball season. You know why? Because this Phillies team is going to give us a lot of reason to. But when we come back, it's Happy Hour Friday with the PT, and I'll ask them, who says no to these trades? Pete Thompson with that. Plus, I got 3 4-packs of Flyers tickets coming up in the next hour.
Enter the code words every day at 973ESPN.com or with the free mobile app. The more codes you enter, the more chances you have to win up to $10,000. Here's the Sports Bash Cash code word.
Cherry. 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 Enter it now on our website, 973ESPN.com, or use the free mobile app. Sports Bash Cash is brought to you by Jersey Shore Federal Credit Union for all your lending needs. Get the next Sports Bash Cash code word at 555.
It's Sports Bash Cash 10 times a day, every weekday at 55 after each hour from 9:55 a.m. to 6:55 p.m. Listen all day for your chance to win Sports Bash Cash up to $10,000. A town square media station serving all of South Jersey. This is 97.3 ESPN, home of the Philadelphia Eagles.
He is hit! He stumbles! He's down!
WENJ HD Millville, Atlantic City.
All right, 5 o'clock hour. It's a happy hour Friday. Yes, indeed. We have reached the 5 o'clock hour on Friday. It's good enough for happy hour. Have a cold one. Ah, baby. Happy hour Friday. Pete Thompson is in the house. I know what happened. He's watching the Masters, and he forgot about us.
No, I didn't forget.
Here, and that's why he's just joining us late here if you're watching on the stream. That's what happened, Peter, isn't it?
That's not true. I didn't forget about you, but yes, I definitely am watching the Masters. I'm totally into it. Watched the heck out of it yesterday, and I'm watching a big fair amount of it today.
Well, I have in my notes here, Pete Thompson. Now, we're going to do a little game today called Who Says No. All right? I'm going to throw a couple of things your way, and you got to tell me who says no. But my first bullet point on here says, the Masters. Tell me a Masters story, because I haven't been able to watch. I want to pull it up on the screen, my rundown, so that the people at home watching the show can actually see that I do preparation for this show.
Whoever accused you of not. I mean, you explained that to me a long time ago. It's very hard to prepare for 4 hours of a show, and you got to prepare a whole bunch of things. Remember the very first time I ever filled in for you? I wrote all this stuff down. I had this big preparation done, and that covered about the first 15 minutes, and I was out. I didn't have anything left of the paper.
So there you go. For those of you watching, there's my rundown. We started up here early in the show. Dan Schulman right there. There's Sal Paolantonio, Paul Hudrick, Geoff Mosher, Bob Wankel, and Who Says No? Happy Hour Friday, Masters. Tell us a Masters story. See, it's all, and I got John Clayton coming up. I got some John Clayton stuff here, so you get a little insight on what my rundown looks like.
Nice. Well, what Masters, you'd like to hear a Masters story from me, or you'd like to hear a Masters story from the event so far?
Both.
Did you know that Rory McIlroy hit his own father in the leg with a shot yesterday?
I did not know that, and I actually wrote here in my notes for Pete Thompson, a decade after the collapse, Rory McIlroy still hasn't done anything at the Masters except for now hit his father.
Yeah, hit his dad in the leg with a golf ball yesterday. He was on the par 4 7th hole, and they said, you see the shot, and you see him go 4 right, and then bing, and it hits the guy right in like the meaty part of, what's behind your shin, your hamstring, right? It hits him right in the hammy back there. And your calf muscle. I'm sorry. The hamstring's up on the top. Yeah. Well, I failed biology and anatomy too. It hit him right in the leg, which that's actually the only place I ever got hit by a golf ball when I was a golf caddy, and it hurt like hell. I mean, it was like a speeding. I went down like I got shot, because the golf ball was probably going over 100 miles an hour. It skipped off the fairway and then baboosh right back into the, my calf muscle, and down I went.
So I see Rose is 7 under. He was way up, but it's all bunched up now. -6, -5, -5, -5. We had my man Cam Rogers on, who gave us a little Masters preview, and he told us that the Masters would play a lot differently than it did in November because everything would be fast and firm, and that it's kind of playing out that way. But you got some good scores, and Rose was brilliant yesterday.
He was brilliant yesterday. He held his own today, all things considered. Yeah, today the course was a little softer. There was a little bit more moisture down there. Not rain per se, but it wasn't as firm and as fast as yesterday. And with that being the case, Justin Rose still only managed an even par round of golf. So, I mean, it's a tough golf course. Yesterday, the story of the day was all the people that weren't going to make it, and all the people that you thought were favorites. I threw out Lee Westwood's name when we talked on Tuesday. He's not going to be around for the weekend. Looks like the cut is going to be +3. So right on that cut line is guys like Sergio Garcia and Ian Poulter and Phil Mickelson. But guys that are out are some prominent names. Matt Kuchar's on the wrong side of the cut line. Danny Willett, who's a former Masters champion, Brooks Koepka, on the other side of that cut line. So there's a lot of people on the opposite side of the cut line that are notable too.
All right, Peter. So now tell us a Masters story that you've been there, you've gone, you've watched, something that is now at the top of your head of this event that makes it so special.
Well, I think and to a lot of people out there, I'm not sure they realize that the prices for the concessions at the Masters are still like the 1950 prices. So I was very fortunate enough to go in 2006. I went for a Wednesday practice round, and that was a hell of a trip. I mean, basically, my brother lived near King of Prussia at the time. We all got into an RV. There was 8 of us that went down, and we went down to South Carolina near like Hilton Head, Myrtle Beach kind of area. And we went to we stayed at a golf resort. So that was the Monday night of the national championship game. We watched the college basketball championship game. We went to some big steakhouse. Then we woke up Tuesday morning and we played 36 holes of golf. Just played till our hearts were content, right? Then we went to bed at a reasonable time on Tuesday night, got up and like crack of dawn and drove from South Carolina over to Georgia and drove to the Masters, parked that RV and walked through the Hallow Gates. And yeah, I mean, it was unbelievable.
Like,
what's that? Walking in?
Yeah, when that moment when you pull up, you park, and then you like walk through there, and it's like, what is that like feeling?
Where we walked in was right by the iconic scoreboard, the gigantic scoreboard that you see, not the one by 18, but it's literally by the entrance where you walk in. And you look to your right, and then what you realize in front of you is that's the number 1 tee is there to your left, but the number 9 green and the fairway is there. And so as we kind of kept walking along, my brother just stopped like right in front of me, and he goes, "Oh my gosh." See, you don't realize how hilly it is. And I think they're doing a good job now. I mean, with HD and all that, I think you can start to see some of the elevation changes. Plus, they're starting to incorporate drones into the broadcast, and you can see how hilly the property is. But from where 12 green is, Golden Bell, to where the number 10 tee box is, for example, it's like 415 feet elevation change. I mean, it's 10 goes straight down. So 9, when my brother stopped, he turned and he looks at me and he goes, "Wow." And I said, "What?" And he goes, "This is where Norman's ball rolled back." So like we're sitting there remembering like Norman came up short of the green there. Greg Norman did in 96, and that started his collapse, And then we proceeded to have this unbelievable day where you basically went and saw the golf in the morning, and then the par 3 contest was still going at that point. They didn't have one of those this year, but the par 3 contest was excellent, and we saw that and had just a great day and just spent buku bucks. I mean, here's 2 stories. One,
you just got done how cheap everything is.
No, that's for the concession stands. The food, like like a pimento cheese sandwich is $1.50. So like my brother and I both got food for lunch. He got like turkey and cheese. I got like a ham and cheese, I think I got egg salad, right? So 2 sandwiches, 2 bags of chips, 2 sodas. How much do you think that would cost, right? 2 sandwiches, 2 chips, 2 sodas. What do you got?
2 sandwiches, 2 chips, 2 sodas. 5, 10, 12, 14, and about $20.
Yeah, it was 12, and it's still 12, and it's always been 12 because the sandwiches are like $1.25, and they're wrapped in like little green wax paper, like your mother used to wrap the sandwiches in when you were a kid going to elementary school, And everything has the Masters logo. The beer is like $2 in like a Masters cup. I mean, people love that, So we just had an unbelievable day. Now that said, the golf shirts, like I'm wearing my Philly shirt today, right? That you gave me back, by the way, that I gave you, that you gave me. But anyhow, the Masters shirts and the merchandise, did you know, Mike Gill, that you can't get that anywhere else? Like any other tournament, the U.S. Open, the PGA, the Open Championship, any of those, you could go and get that stuff online, especially the USGA stuff. They pump that out like nobody's business. Now, mind you, in 2006, I don't think Poshmark existed. So I don't know that was something I could have used to go get used Masters material.
For me, who has a beautiful Masters shirt.
Yeah. Did you get it from Poshmark?
I did.
Yes. And the person that sold it to you only got it in one place, though.
Well, Augusta. It was still in the bag. It was never used. It was never worn.
Yeah. Now, do you wear it?
Yes and no. I wore it,
yeah,
and then I grew out of it, and now I've thrown back into it.
Oh, nice. Well, you should have been wearing it this week. I do not currently. I have one item of clothing. You've seen it. That green thing, that green solid deal that I wear under the tan coat, and I have one green Masters item currently. And when I wear that, people are like, "Where did you get that?" Because or "Oh, did you go?" Because they know you can't find that anywhere else. So I kind of put two stories into one.
I have it laid out.
Cheap food, expensive gear.
I have it laid out for Sunday.
Oh, well, there you go. That'll be good.
Calendar.
Oh, I have good news, by the way. Here's an update from Tuesday. I was able to sell one pair of my Flyers tickets, so I do not have to go up and see that god-awful team twice this weekend. I'm only going to see them tomorrow.
All right. Well, you got out of the Sunday game.
Yes.
I bought the tickets, and I'm giving them away to our listeners.
Good job by you.
I have 3 4-packs that I'm giving away at the end of this segment.
Yes, that's excellent. Well, good luck. Tell them to look for the PT up there tomorrow.
Oh, no, I said Sunday's game.
Oh, well, then I won't be there.
So, all right. So, who says no to these trades? Now we transition to the Flyers. Okay, you ready?
Yep.
So this is a piece at The Athletic, and they wrote a bunch of different trade scenarios because the Flyers are out of this thing, right?
Okay.
So they say, who says no? Would it be the Flyers who say no or the other team that says no? All right.
All right. Lay them on me.
All right. JVR, Morgan Frost, a 2021 first-round pick, and a 2022 first-round pick for Jack Eichel. Who says no?
JVR, Morgan Frost. Oh. And what was the rest of it? JVR, Morgan Frost.
A 2021 first-round pick and a 2022 first-round pick.
I still think the Flyers would do that. I don't know that Buffalo would do that. I don't think Buffalo would do that. I don't think the Sabres are ready to do that.
All right. According to the article here, the Flyers writer, who was Charlie O'Connor?
Yes.
He says Buffalo would say no. And Buffalo Sabres reporter John Vogel also says that Buffalo would say no.
Okay. So we're in the same place. All right. I'm 1 for 1. That's good.
All right. Ivan Provorov, Travis Konecny, and a 2021 first-round pick for Jack Eichel.
Ivan Provorov, TK, and a 2021. Provorov's pretty damn good. Again, I think the Flyers would take that one. Yeah, I'd still have to think that I don't know that Buffalo's getting back what they want in that deal. So I'd say Buffalo might say no.
Who says no? Buffalo.
Oh, 2 for 2.
Yeah. And all right, here's another one for you. Travis Konecny.
Okay.
Travis Sanheim.
Who scored the other night.
Morgan Frost. A 2021 first-round pick for Jack Eichel.
Well, that's quite a bit. Travis Konecny, Travis Sanheim. So you got a forward, a defenseman, a complete and total up-and-coming forward who could be great and could be a bust, and a first-round pick.
For Jack Eichel.
That's getting closer. Again, I still think the Flyers would do that one, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that one's enough for Buffalo to go on. Maybe Buffalo, but I that one might get it done.
I don't know if you're reading the article or not, but it literally says Buffalo maybe.
Oh, no, I'm not, but that's great.
All right, here's another one. Travis Konecny for Johnny Gaudreau. Who says no?
Oh, wow. Boy, the Gaudreau to Philly stuff, our former colleague, right? Broads, that's his guy. Can't we get some sort of insight on that and figure out what's going on? If it was up to Gaudreau, he'd be here already. What's his salary? What's his salary cap situation? I think he's got another year on his.
Well, this is what it says: is that Gaudreau would want to sign in Philly. His contract expires in 2022, so that the Flyers have a pretty good indication that it's easy to imagine he would want to re-sign here. So if you trade it for him, even though that his contract is coming up, that they feel pretty good. So who says no?
It might be the Flyers, though, because how old is Gaudreau versus how old is Konecny? I think Konecny probably is more. Oh, God, Konecny's only 24.
Yes.
And Johnny Hockey's he's still good, but he's not 24. Correct. He's 27. Yeah, maybe the Flyers, that might not be enough.
Who says no? Flyers maybe is what Charlie says.
Mm.
You're on the money here today, PT. All right. Jake Voracek, Morgan Frost, a 2021 first-round pick for Johnny Gaudreau.
Wait, Jake can be moved.
Yes.
But Jake's contract is the albatross. I mean, it's not like NBA matching, but I don't know that anybody wants to take on all those years of Jake. Let me see how old Jake Voracek is.
4 years older than Gaudreau. He has got 3 years left at 8.25.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So you're talking about having a guy he turns 32 in August, so he's going to be 33, 34, and 35. I mean, to just be sort of one-dimensional, he's really just a passer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if Calgary would do that.
Yeah. Who says no? Flames.
All right. I got this stuff figured out.
You're doing pretty good. Travis Konecny, Travis Sanheim for Johnny Gaudreau and Rasmus Andersson.
Oh, well, Rasmus Andersson, is he even in the conversation? Gaudreau is in the conversation because of how long he's been there, and they thought Gaudreau was going to leave after the first time.
Well, that's exactly what they said, is that they don't have any desire to trade him.
Oh, okay, all right, yeah, I'd do that one tomorrow, but I don't think they're going to move that guy.
You're doing really well, Pete.
Thanks, buddy.
All right. You want who do we got here? Let's see. You got some trades for like Scott Lawton. You got some trades for Nolan Patrick, Phil Myers. Yeah, let's see if I can find a good one here for the PT. All right. I thought you would do pretty bad at this game.
Well, I mean, some of those names are pretty common.
The Voracek stuff's interesting because you've mentioned it. You know, nobody's going to want that deal. You would essentially have to give him. Do you see any scenario we can get rid of that deal?
No, and Paul Holmgren signed him to that deal, if I'm not mistaken. You know, let me look up his contract one more time just so I can see exactly how many years he has left and what the numbers are on Voracek.
I like this trade. Eric Gustafson for a bag of Lay's potato chips.
Yeah, I would have said a bag of pucks, you know. Eric Gustafson for some, Cooperalls and some custom Bauer skates or something. What are we in? 2021. So he's 32 years old. Good Lord. You've got 3 more years of that. And that last year, that 2023-2024 season, he's scheduled to make $7.5 million.
He's an 8.25 cap hit for the next 3 seasons.
Oh,
now Durso told Josh the other night on game night that the only chance in his mind for Voracek is the expansion draft.
Yeah. Do they leave him exposed for Seattle for the new franchise that's out there? You know, I mean, people were all upset when Pierre-Edouard Bellemare left, right? But I mean, is that something that really affected the Flyers one way or another in the season after he left? No. You know, I understand. Yeah, I would agree with that was Durso that told you that?
He told Josh that on game night.
Yeah, I would agree with that assessment. You know, maybe they can leave him exposed. You know, but listen, the Flyers with leaving people exposed, they left Ghost exposed. Who wanted him? Nobody, right? I mean, I think it's not the same scenario money-wise, but it's certainly the same scenario sort of who wants him and who doesn't.
What about Phil Myers, Nolan Patrick, and a second-round pick for Ryan Ellis of Nashville?
Ryan Ellis from Nashville. So it's Phil Myers. Now, Nolan Patrick is interesting to me. See, I still believe in Phil Myers. I know he's had a down season, but I still believe in Phil Myers. Nolan Patrick, to me,
he has 2 points in 30 games in the last 2 games. He got off to a good start and then hasn't done
right. Fell off the shelf, you know. But I don't know the Flyers would do that, you know. I don't know if the Flyers would do that deal, to be honest with you. And for whatever reason, not just because of Myers, but the combo of Myers and Patrick, I think, would be too much for them.
All right. Frost, Igor Zamala, a first-round pick for Ellis.
Frost, Igor Zamala, and a first-round pick. I don't know that Frost is untouchable, but I don't think that's because Frost has been in almost every deal you've said. I don't know a lot.
Got value that doesn't make any money.
Yeah, and I think so. I think if you look at that on the surface, Frost and Zamula are both affordable and have great upside.
I like this guy's text. All these trade denials are depressing.
Well, yeah, it kind of tells you that the Flyers don't have a lot of moves. Imagine if you're Chuck Fletcher. How are you going to make any of these? Who wants my trash? Here's a nice piece of trash.
Todd Brigantine says, how do we get PT to be the Flyers GM? That's what we need. PT is the GM, and his assistant GM is Billy Schweim.
Oh, my God. Well, we bring back fighting. That'd be the first thing.
You drop the gloves? No, you're not signed.
Yeah.
Can you score a goal? Yeah, I can score a lot. We don't want you.
We'd make sure to put half glass behind the penalty box so we could have another Ty Domi kind of situation.
All right, Peter, that's all the time we have today.
That was it?
John Clayton's coming up.
Oh, well, tell him I said hello. He's a good dude.
He is a good dude. You know what?
Gave him directions to the 95 once. It was awesome.
You did what?
He was in the media room at the Link after an Eagles game with me, and he was sitting there, and I said, "Hi, John." He said, "Hi." I said, "Big fan of yours." He said, "Oh, thanks." And then he looks at me and says, "Hey, let me ask you something." I'm thinking he's going to ask me something real profound. He goes, "How do I get to the airport out of here?" And it wasn't easy. You have to kind of loop around. So
we just sent him to the Northeast.
I didn't send him to Temple. I mean, no, I'm just, you had to get the car steered in the right direction. You know how it is on Broad
Street. He's over
Street,
at Franklin Field. That Pete Thompson.
Yeah, I sent him to Hog Island.
Get back to the Masters.
All right, man. Thanks, buddy. Good to talk to you.
That was good. That was fun. You did a good job.
Thank you. Proud of you.
Proud of you. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. And, of course, Pete Thompson, like August, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Coming up, it is John Clayton, the professor. He will join us next here on the Sports Bash. But right now, I got 3 4-packs of tickets to go see the Flyers and Sabres Sunday afternoon at the Wells Fargo Center. 609-403-0973. Send me a text with the hashtag Flyers. Hashtag Flyers. First 3 text messages, you get a 4-pack of tickets to the game. Josh will reach out to you to let you know that you've been selected. 609-403-0973. Send me a text. Use the hashtag Flyers. First 3 people that do it, you get a 4-pack of tickets to go see the game Saturday. No strings attached. That's all you need to do. 609-403-0973. Send me a text. Use the hashtag Flyers. First 3 people to do it, bam, you're going to get a 4-pack of tickets to see the Flyers play the Sabres. Flyers tickets available at PhiladelphiaFlyers.com. All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. And don't forget, you can watch the show live over at 97.3ESPN.com through Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. We appreciate everybody watching the show. John Clayton is with us from the Washington Post, NFL Insider. The NFL Draft is coming up, and you can hear coverage of the NFL Draft right here on 97.3 ESPN. First-round coverage on Thursday night, April 29th, 7 o'clock. So we got all these trades. Do we feel like something is actually set in stone? We got key questions with 3 weeks to go before the first round of the NFL Draft with NFL Insider John Clayton from the Washington Post as he joins us right now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. A closer look at the top of the draft. John, welcome back. How you been, pal?
Doing well. How about you?
It's got interesting. You know, the last 2 weeks we got to kind of figure out, do we like the Eagles moving from 6 to 12? Are we not sure? I mean, what's the buzz around the move that Howie Roseman made about a week or two ago?
I think it was smart because, this is not going to be a winning team this year, right? So in other words, getting that pick as high as it was not going to change the equation of this team. But there's two things that you like about the deal. Number one, at number 12, they can still get what might be the second best defensive player in the draft, because when you really look at it, there's three considerations in the top 12 or 13. You got Patrick Surtain, you got another cornerback, and then you also have Micah Parsons from Penn State as being three considerations, but it's very well likely that there may only be two. So you're sitting at 12, you get the second best player on defense in the draft. That's not bad. And then even more valuable is the sense that you're talking next year's draft choices, because say what you want about this year's draft. It's really thin on defense, really thin. It's good on offense, but really thin on defense. And when you get into even the later rounds, fifth round, fourth round, you may have positions that'll have undraftable guys with undraftable grades that might be available then. And so it's better to stockpile next year because you had so many guys coming back to seniors this year for next year, and then you had all the opt-outs this year, and so next year's draft choices are more valuable, and they're able to pick up a first rounder from next year.
Yeah, and possibly if that Carson Wentz thing goes right, they might have 3 first-round picks. So we did see another trade where San Francisco went from 12 all the way up to 3. So are they really going to take Mac Jones with that pick, or are they just putting that out there, and do they have their sights on somebody else?
No, I think they are. I initially thought it was going to be Trey Lance because, as Kyle Shanahan said toward the end of the season, it's like, I like the Kansas City model of what they do if you take a quarterback in the first round. You sit them for the first year, and then you let them grow, and then you get them ready for the second year, okay? And figuring that they're not going to get a first-round pick for Jimmy Garoppolo, they're keeping Garoppolo. And so now I initially thought it was going to be Lance, but everything I hear is going to be Mac Jones. And here's the reason. You have Kyle Shanahan was in Washington. The owner, Dan Snyder, picked up, RG3, mobile quarterback, all those different things. But that's not necessarily the type of quarterback that Kyle likes. If you go back in his history, he likes guys that have these different qualifications: smart, accurate, knows down and distance and what to do in down and distance. And so you see that certainly from Mac Jones. And so even though it was costly to move up to 3, he moved in a position to do it. Now it's funny because some people have Justin Fields going there. I at one point had Trey Lance going there, but now I think it's going to be Mac Jones, and it's for that reason. Because again, it's not like they need him to play next year. But let's say, for example, he picks things up so well that they can get in a position to maybe get a good draft choice next year before the trade deadline with Jimmy Garoppolo. And so, I think that you can see is probably going to be Mac Jones.
All right. With that, then, there's 3 in a row. What about number 4?
Number 4, now this is where the gamesmanship really starts because, you're hearing so many things out of number 4 with Atlanta, number 7 with Detroit. Okay. But everything I hear out of Atlanta, they're taking a position player, and most likely is going to be Penei Sewell, the tackle out of Oregon, because this guy, you can look at his body at 330 pounds. You can look at his physique, his power, and all that stuff. That's like a new Trent Williams, right? And so it's like, I can't see them passing up on him, particularly after Caleb McGarry, who they took in the first round a couple of years ago, is not done well at tackle. He's their weak link at right tackle. And so it's not like what they can do is they can play him at the left guard position because they cut James Carpenter and develop him to eventually go over and take over for McGarry. So I can see that happening. If not, I can see him taking Kyle Pitts, who can really add to their offense because they've got two really good receivers. And now if you add him at tight end, your offense is going to be that much better. So I don't see them trading. I don't see them taking a quarterback. I just see them playing some games and saying, oh, yeah, we're getting lots of calls on this stuff. But in the end, I think they're going to basically just take a position player.
If there's a fourth quarterback taken, where does he go? Is that still in the top 10? Does he slide out of the top 10? Is that when trades get involved? It looked like 4 quarterbacks could go in that top 10. Is that less likely now?
Well, it depends on Detroit. I mean, I think you can still see Detroit doing that. You can see them taking a position player too. But I mean, because what you wonder about is that they get Jared Goff in the trade, right? Then all of a sudden they're still shopping him. So they're not totally sold on him, but then they came back a couple weeks ago and they took $20 million of his base salary and turned it into, signing into signing bonus. And so that, says that he might be there a year or two. So I can see them taking Justin Fields. If not, he can maybe fall to Denver. But I think what's going to happen with Denver is that they want somebody to compete this year against Drew Lock. Now, Fields could do it, but again, they'd be better served maybe to go for a Teddy Bridgewater in some kind of a cheap trade that, you have the Carolina Panthers picking up his $10 million guarantee and just dumping him for like a 7th round pick or something like that. You could see that they could still go for Alex Smith, maybe trading a 7th against Gardner Minshew, and then they can come back and if Carolina doesn't take Rashad Slater, the offensive lineman, then they can get the second best offensive lineman in the draft.
John Clayton, Washington Post, looking at draft questions as we get 20 days away from the NFL draft. All right. So you mentioned the fact that, Detroit. What about Carolina now that they've got the trade for Darnold? Do you think they're still in play for quarterback at number 8, or is that kind of taking that off the map for them?
Off the map. I mean, in fact, that's the interesting thing. Daniel Jeremiah came out for the NFL Network today, and, he hit on something I thought could happen too. They could go for Rashawn Slater and take him with the 8th pick. Now, again, he's got better technique than Sewell, and he's going to be a real good offensive lineman. And remember, they have not re-signed their left tackle, Russell Okung. He's still out there as a free agent. And so now the possibility is, they could take a cornerback, they could take a wide receiver, but I think right now they could probably take Slater. And but no, they're going to go position player because remember, you would say they could consider a quarterback at number 8, but when they made this trade, they put the 50-year option on. So now that that Darnold with the $18+ million on the 50-year option is going to be there this year and next year. So no quarterback.
All right, John Clayton's with us here answering draft questions 20 days out. Eagles at 12. How many defensive players are taken before pick 12?
1 or 2 at the most. 2 at the most. One's a possibility because again, when you look at the top 13, what you're looking at is that because one thing I didn't mention as far as what about Trey Lance? Story came out today that the Washington football team may be willing to trade a lot of draft choices to move up from 19 to get Trey Lance. So if that's going to be the case, Denver could consider doing that, and that would mean 5 quarterbacks, 2 or 3 wide receivers, probably 2 wide receivers, maybe 3 offensive linemen, and then this is all in the top 13. And so when you're looking at, you got Patrick Surtain, you got another cornerback, and then you've got Micah Parsons, and that may be it. So I think what you're looking at the 12th pick, and how strange it is that they could at number 12, and this is what the smart part about trading down, because Howie probably figured this out, is that you can get one of the top players in a bad defensive draft, by the way. This draft is bad for defensive players. Not a lot of good defensive tackles, not a lot of good safeties. Linebacking core is average. Pass rushers, hardly anything up top for the second straight year. And so it's like, they can be in a position right now to get the second best cornerback, or maybe if they're lucky, they could get Patrick Surtain.
Yeah, I know. As you mentioned here, the draft, a lot of executives too, John, I guess, and you kind of mentioned this before, but some guys opted out. I mean, can you imagine some of the guys in the top part of this draft didn't play football last year? I mean, this has got to be a really pressure-filled situation for some of these executives trying to figure out. It's hard enough when they've got 12, 15 games to these guys. They haven't played in a year, guys like Micah Parsons, Caleb Farley, even J.C. Horn opted out, about halfway through the season. You got guys at the top of this, Penei Sewell, who didn't play last year. How is that adding intrigue to all this?
Oh, it just adds a lot of problems for the people making selections because you could make the wrong selection.
Sure.
You know, like here's Sewell, and you're right. I mean, in the first 13 picks, there could be 4 guys who opted out and didn't play last year. They can go. Because remember,
Lamar Chase too.
Lamar Chase. Yep. Lamar Chase is in that group. I mean, I counted up there could be 7, 8, or maybe even as many as 9 first-round picks who opted out last year, and that's incredible when you think about it. Because again, you know what you're going on is that you know you've got 2019 tape, and then you've got one workout you may have watched in person, and that's it.
Yeah.
And so it's like, that's not a lot.
John, a lot of Eagles fans, you like to trade. I like to trade, but some people wanted to see a guy like Kyle Pitts or Jamar Chase when they were at number 6. What are the possibilities? Because there are very few mock drafts that have a guy like Pitts falling to number 12. Do you see that scenario at all?
Yeah, I can see it. I mean, because again, what you're looking at is that the possibility of maybe having the third receiver could be there. I mean, you know, Chase is going to be gone, and then you know, I still wonder because I really can't get a bead as far as what's going on with the Alabama wide receiver. Because again, he won the Heisman Trophy, but again, he's smaller, and so I think he could end up being the third receiver taken in this draft. I mean, he's a real mystery right now because he could go number 2, but again, there's 3 really good receivers that are in the top 15, and certainly the Eagles are in a position to maybe draft that. So I think they're in good shape there. So no, really, when they came down to it, I mean, again, smart move. I mean, you save a little bit of money under the cap and in salary, not having to pay a pick that high by making that trade. But also what you do is you find your way to be able to at least get some value that you can use this year and then last year, and then next year.
Yeah, John, I find an intriguing team in this draft to be Denver at 9. Drew Lock is their quarterback. If a quarterback falls there, I mean, the intrigue behind Denver in your mind, what kind of scenarios are there for them? Because they hold the key to a lot in this draft.
Yeah. I mean, and they're getting more scenarios as you can go. As I mentioned, that they could be a candidate in a cheap trade, and I bring up this painful thing. I was talking about Brock Osweiler. Remember when Brock Osweiler signed a 4-year, $72 million deal with the Houston Texans, right?
I do, yes.
And then, you know, it was so bad that the Texans had to trade him to Cleveland, who basically had like 14 draft choices and nothing under the cap. And, you know, to get the deal done, you know, they get a 4th-round pick in return, but to make the trade, they had to give up a 2nd-round pick just so they could take that contract. And so it's like, you know, I could see a similarity like that because here you have Bridgewater, you know, three years on a $63 million deal. He's got $10 million base guarantee. So, like, if you're Denver, one option you can do is you can say, okay, I'll give you a 7th rounder in 2023. You pay the $10 million. We'll get Bridgewater. George Payton, the general manager, gets the quarterback that he was involved drafting with Minnesota, and that's a guy that can compete against that. Here's another possibility, too, because, again, you know, they could take an offensive lineman at number 9. I don't see them necessarily taking a cornerback, but they could. You know, they could take Surtain, but you know they've got 3 cornerbacks that are out there, so that guy's not going to play. But what I can also see is the one story out of Washington is they're willing to trade a bundle to move up to get Trey Lance, and if Lance is at number 9, they could take him, but they could also trade with Washington and move down to 19 and still get some good stuff.
Should be very intriguing because of all these quarterbacks that are in play in this first round. Teams trying to trade up to get them. So many smoke screens, as always with the draft. John Clayton, the Washington Post, he's answering draft questions over there. So check out his story at thewashingtonpost.com. Follow him at John Clayton for more. 20 days ago to the NFL draft. Excellent insight there, John. We appreciate you as always.
Hey, by the way, mock draft 3.0 coming up on Tuesday.
All right, there you go. Mock Draft 3.0 comes up on Tuesday. We love diving into that, and he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. There's John Clayton. Very smart, he says. Pick number 12. Very smart for Philadelphia. We always appreciate John Clayton, the professor, and we will take a look at that Mock Draft 3.0 with him next week on the show. You know if it's John Clayton, you know you're listening to the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. We gave you Sal Pal today. We gave you John Clayton. We gave you Geoff Mosher. Are you getting any better football breakdowns than right here on the Sports Bash? I think not. But when we come back, we're going to go sound of the day. Oh, boy. It's been a great week. We've got great sounds. Stick around. This is the Sports Bash. Plus, I want to congratulate our 3 winners. Eric Levi, Sean Gleason, and Ken, what's that? Mavoli? Ken Mavoli, I think. They each were the first 3 in. We had a lot of people, by the way, thanks to everybody who participated, who all texted in to win those tickets. But they were the first 3. They had the fastest fingers in the West. Actually, we're in the East. All right, we got the 5 sounds of the day coming up next. Hey, coming up on Monday, we'll take a look back at the Sixers and Phillies weekend. Paul Hudrick at 3:20, Bob Wankel at 4:40, plus NBC Philadelphia's John Clark joins the show, and football at 4 with Geoff Mosher. Plus, don't forget, 55 after the hour, you have 4 more chances to win up to $10,000. All right, let's check in on today's sound of the day. Dan Schulman, Sal Paolantonio, Paul Hudrick, Bob Wankel, Geoff Mosher had a good show today. Let's see what stood out for today's sound of the day. Dan Schulman, how's the NL East look?
I think the National League East is a fascinating division. Atlanta's obviously not gotten off to a good start, but you got to respect the talent that they've got and what they've done the last few years, and I think they're going to make some noise. The Mets made some obvious upgrades in the offseason, so they're going to make some noise. And I wouldn't count Washington out. I mean, they're a lot different than they were in some respects than they were a couple of years ago when they won the World Series. But I think the Phillies are in the conversation for sure. But, one thing we all have to remember, and I know you do, is that 8 teams made the playoffs last year. Only 5 will make the playoffs this year.
All right. He talked about the whole National League East. Now, they talked about it the other night. I was listening to Kirkchin. He said there's not a bad team in the East. So how are you stacking them up after 2 weeks?
I mean, I think that the start to the Braves season will be rectified at some point. I don't think they're just a bad team. I think they showed that in the games since the Phillies series. I think the Phillies have to be among the 3. To me, it's the Braves.
His point about 8 teams last year, only 5 this year.
Yeah, I think there's only 3 teams that legitimately are in the running for the division. I think it's the Phillies. I think it's the Braves. I think it's the Mets. I feel like the Nats are they're just not the same team they used to be. And honestly, I don't know if more than one team makes the postseason out of the NL East.
But they're beating each other up, although Cincinnati's off to a fast start. Their offense is really good. I think the Dodgers are shoo-ins.
I think you get 2 teams out of the West. I think it's the Dodgers and the Padres.
You would think that the loser of that division is probably the wild card.
Right. And then the other wild card is, I mean, maybe it could be from the NL East, but I just feel like the Central.
There are a lot of bad teams in the Central.
Yeah, but I feel like they still have things they can figure out. Like I feel like the Cardinals and Cubs are just too good to be that bad.
I don't know.
The Brewers have good pitching.
Brewers, yeah, I mean those teams are all they feel like they're all 89 win teams, maybe somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
Can the Phillies get to 92?
I don't know about that.
Ooh. Dan Schulman, but the Phillies starting pitching.
I'm still curious about the rotation. Love Nola, love Wheeler, and if this is Eflin, then it's a great top 3. Still wondering a little bit about the 4 or 5 in the rotation with Chase Anderson and Matt Moore, and whether those will be the guys to take them through the whole season. Saw a lot of Chase Anderson last year with Toronto, obviously. So there are still some question marks, but there are question marks on just about every team unless you're the Dodgers.
There is, but here's the question I have. We talked about this with Bob Wankel, but yesterday Kevin Cooney brought it up. Are the questions at the top of the Phillies rotation too much? In other words, is Nola a question or not?
I think it's interesting that we're actually asking the questions about Nola, and it's almost, I think we don't realize it might be a luxury. It's a luxury that we're asking these questions because of the fact that in the past, how many times did we wonder if the Phillies had any pitching? And now it's, well, if Nola is your 3rd best pitcher in some working theories out there, then you're actually doing pretty good because you know what? Not a lot of teams' 3rd best pitcher or 2nd best pitcher is of the caliber of Aaron Nola.
You hear a lot, like he's a number 2, he's a good 1B, all that stuff, and I just wonder if he's not quote unquote an ace, is that good enough?
Well, listen, if he's not, maybe you get him on a hot streak, go to the trade deadline and make a huge trade to get somebody else's big pitcher.
Try to. I don't know if you have enough to do that. Their farm system isn't the greatest.
No, but if you have a deal where you see somebody with a bad team out there, remember you said only 5 teams make the playoffs, and you have a team that they have a really, really good starting pitcher, and you go to them and be like, hey, listen, we want your guy. We'll give you Aaron Nola and Bryson Stott.
Sal Paolantonio. What about Jonathan Gannon?
Jonathan Gannon was specifically brought in here as a major difference between him and Jim Schwartz. The wide 9 is gone. The single high safety is probably will be extinct for the most part. You will see 2 safeties back. They will protect the house and try to break down the protection a la Jim Johnson. And they will rely on their corners to cover. And they're going to want big corners.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing? We were neither of us Jim Schwartz haters.
Right.
But do you think bringing Jonathan Gannon in will make the Eagles' defense better?
I think it'll make a better use of the talent. I think the problem with Schwartz's scheme, for as good as he was able to get out of it, at the end of the day, it was a very heavily dependent on the front. It didn't focus much on the second and third.
The front's still the more
defense.
talented part of this team.
It is, but you need to amplify what the other levels can do. And I think that at some point, you need a defensive coordinator who's going to get more out of the linebackers and the secondary and going to focus more on those positions.
Sal Paolantonio, what do you do at 12 if the top corners and the top safeties, I say top corners, I mean top receivers. I thought John Clayton really broke it down. It's not a great defensive draft, that you could still get one of the top two defensive players in this draft in a weak defensive draft. If you can get one of those two. So what does Sal Pal say?
I take the corner. It's a greater need. And, if you look at some of the receivers that, are there in the first round, who are first-round talent, you already have one in Jalen Reagor. Reagor's the same size as a Waddle.
Now, you've said over and over you'd go corner over receiver. That's not really the question. But what John Clayton kind of added to this mix is you get the second-best defensive player in this draft, essentially. And if it's that player or one of the wide receivers, you can get that receiver in round 2 because there's a lot of them.
Right. And you mentioned Rashad Bateman. I've brought up the fact that, there are other guys out there like, Armand St. Brown from USC. There are receivers to be found in this draft. But I just feel like I'm with Sal Pal. You cannot get past the high caliber corners in this draft because if you do, you are going to be burned by your own division for the next 3 years.
All right, that's our show. We got game night coming up next. Kevin McCormick at 6:40 previewing the Sixers and the Pelicans. Don't forget tomorrow, the locker room with Billy Schweim. And Sports Bash Saturday's got Eric Edholm talking a little NFL draft. Billy's back with the locker room on Sunday, and I'm back on Monday. John Clark from NBC Sports Philadelphia will join me on Monday's show. Going to be a busy week. By the way, next Tuesday, Jake Fisher from Sports Illustrated just wrote a book about tanking in the NBA and how it's really changed the league. It's going to be a good read. We'll talk to him on Tuesday's show. All right, I got a Sports Bash Cash code word, and I am out.